Guys, so we have an urgent information coming out. Please share this video. Today is December 22nd, 2024, and welcome to the Real GS News channel. Alright, before I start, guys, I want to send my prayers and deepest condolences to the families and friends that lost their loved ones. Something big went down early this morning in Brooklyn, New York. And a couple of days ago, I posted a video that the governor has deployed more National Guards. Again, subway, train station. Today, there was something bad happened. And there's a video I cannot play. I'm not going to play the video. Absolutely not. I can't. It's very disturbing. And I did watch the video and it crushed my heart. Because again, this person has family, loved ones. A train station today, there was something
so late now.
bad
I'm
happened.
just gonna wait till tomorrow.
And there's a video I cannot play. I'm not gonna play the video. Absolutely not. I can't. It's very disturbing, and I did watch the video and it crushed my heart because again, this person has family, loved ones, and it says here a video of a bystander discovering a woman fully, you know what, on the F train after an individual threw a match at her. Unbelievable. This is where we at. What's going on in these end times? The minds and heart of many pure evil. Earlier this morning, there was a huge event that took place on a train near the Coney Islands, Stillwell Avenue. Station in Brooklyn, New York, when a bystander watched a huge event. Follow me with the code words. As a sleeping woman was set on, you know what, in a shocking act of lawlessness. According to investigators, a man sitting across from her calmly lit a you know what and threw it as he passed by and fled the station before anyone could react. Why, dude? This was a man, by the way, that lit up the match. And this happened, I think it happened like around 7 a.m. early morning. And unbelievable. Once again, you have a responder arrive to find the you-know-who flames. Despite their efforts, why the Gov is deploying National Guards. What's going on in that big city? Again, my condolences and prayers to the families and friends that lost their loved ones. We're going to go with verse of the day. We're going to start with the book of Samuel, 1 Samuel chapter 12, verse 22. For the sake of his great name, the Lord will not reject his people, because the Lord was pleased to make you his own. 1 Samuel chapter 12, verse 22. We're going to go on thoughts on today's verse. The great and holy God will not be unfaithful. He will act to show his character and honor his holy name, even when we, his people, don't deserve his grace. Why God will love and preserve us in our great Israelite ancestors is nothing short of grace, love, and faithfulness. Why would the Father send the Son to live among us, die on the cross, and raise him back to life to defeat death? Because of his grace, love, and faithfulness. If God did this in the past, how much more will he not display his grace, love, and faithfulness in the days and years to come. Here's a prayer. Holy and righteous Father, your grace has not only saved me, but also sustained me even when the evil one tries to use my personal failures to make me doubt your love for me. Thank you for triumphing over my unworthiness and blessing me your righteousness so that I will be fit for your kingdom and glory. I praise you in Jesus' name, the name of the Son, who is full of grace, abounding in love, and enduring in faithfulness. Amen. Guys, for those of you that want to send us letters of prayer requests, you can send it to me, Luis Santiago, or my wife, Jessica Santiago, at 3432 US Highway 19, number 2, Holiday, Florida, 34691. I have a news article here I want to pull up really quick. And, man, this is the type of news that nobody wants to, again, put out, because we want to live in a peaceful world and just love one another and worship our Lord and Savior. But we do live in this fallen world. In this fallen world, there are good, there are bad, there are saint, there are evil. I mean, it's just too much going on in this fallen world. The gospel is not being spread too much, and we are seeing many wicked people out there doing demonic things. Once again, you have the NYPD has released images of a suspect they are seeking after a woman was set and passed Sunday morning on a subway train. Now, the reason why I'm not saying certain names, because I get suspended for some reason, and I'm trying to avoid that. So hopefully one day in the future, maybe perhaps someone is going to purchase this platform and make life easier for many of us. But when it comes to this type of news, my video is always being removed, or I get suspended. So it says here, you have officer arrived at the Coney Island Stillwell Avenue subway station at around 7:30 a.m. for a call of assistance. They found a woman on, in the mid-train car aboard a stationary F train. Wow. Once again, the officer extinguished the fire and responding to EMS, technician pronounced gone.
I figured they was looking at something.
Investigators say that the woman was sleeping.
That's Shadow.
Sleeping. So basically, just minding her own business. 7:30 a.m. Sleeping in a subway car when individual believed to be a man in his 20s just walked into the car, which was stopped at the time, and set, fire. Why? Unbelievable. Police do not know if the individual and victim knew each other. Now, once again, so it's a man. So the man picture in the images released by the NYPD is described as a male, 5'6", tall, 150 pounds, approximately 25 to 30 years of age.
Looking forward here a second.
He was last seen wearing a gray hooded sweatshirt, blue jeans, a dark color knit hat with a red band, and brown boots. A reward of up to $10,000 payable by the Crime Stoppers for info in regard to his incident, the police said.
It's been a while since I looked for this.
They do have a number here if you guys know that.
Here it is.
Again, see him around, but I can't show his picture either, guys. For some reason, I'm showing pictures is getting me in trouble now.
This right here is where the Russians have a big troop built up at. Right here.
For some reason, I'm looking at the picture right now. This individual looked like he came from the southern region. That's what it looks like. He looks like, because the way they dress and Again, it seems like he came from the southern region,
Oh, okay.
and I'm not saying he's from the southern region, but he looks like it. All right, so
This is all a bunch of training grounds.
it says here, the man got off the train before it left the station, according to law enforcement. So there's a picture down there, and guys, I'm gonna share this link in my Twitter page if you want to check out the article. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Man. Again, my condolences and prayers to the families and friends that lost their loved ones. Unbelievable. Give me a second here, guys. We have images of the perpetrator and are working closely with the NYPD investigator to track him down and cuff him for this senseless and horrific crime. MTA Chief Security Officer Michael said in a statement. Now, the individual was described as a 5'6", 150 pound, and approximately 25 to 30 years old. And last seen wearing a gray hoodie, sweatshirt, blue jeans, and a dark color knit hat with a red band. Like I said, it seems like this person came from the southern region.
I have not, noob. There's not much bear around here where I'm at. I could have cleared there with some S400s.
Man.
Somewhere over in here. More tank dugout spots.
Look at this one, guys. Look at this story here. Another incident happened in a subway. There was an event. Suspect jumped on train after opening fire on 2 at Brooklyn subway platform. This is the reason why the Gov has deployed National Guard. And I do believe a lot of this is connected to many coming from the southern. I have a feeling it's connected. So you have 2 wanted in a Saturday afternoon event on a Q train subway platform in Brooklyn. So it seems like Brooklyn's a really, really, really hot spot. It's a really hot spot out there in Brooklyn. Man. An afternoon event, GUN event in Brooklyn, sent 2 to the hospital and shut down a subway stop as police investigated the daytime event. Once again, police said 2 individuals were SHOT shortly before 3:30 p.m. Wow. 21 years old man was SHOT in the leg, and the 18 years old was grazed in the stomach. According to investigator, both were transported to a nearby hospital and were expected to be okay. So the event on the subway platform of Q train, according to law enforcement sources, following the event, 2 suspects escaped on a train. The 2 suspects were still being sought by police hours later, but no suspect description were being publicly distributed. In other words, they didn't even know it. They don't know their.
There's a way I could go back in time on Google Earth.
Their breakdowns, what clothes they were wearing, this and that. Wow.
There you go.
Seems like NY is really hot right now. It's really hot in NY. And guys, this is the breaking news coming out right now, and that's the reason why the governor has put out an urgent deployment of National Guard. At the same time, there's been a rise, not rise, but the number has increased for more cops in NY. I think it's time. I think it's time for that region to turn red. I mean, we're talking about LEFT are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and that's protecting many out there. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. Again, please share this video. For those of you that want to give a life to Christ, you can email me. My email is in the description box. Me and my wife are here to help many and to lead many to the righteous path, and that's the path of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
We know that the Russians, very likely the Chinese, and other powers already have smuggled in nuclear devices into the United States. The weapon is probably already here. Their target priorities are a lot different now. They want to instill fear. They want to instill compliance. What you and I are getting as civilians, it's not the real story. There's been 2,221 nuclear devices detonated on the face of this planet. One nuke going off is not going to be the end of the world. The top people know it's survivable. Science and the math is absolutely clear. If you're going to want to survive what's coming up, you're going to have the desire to live, to protect your family. Well, why should I? There's no hope. Why should I prepare? I can't survive. I can't do this. Fear and the inaction that comes from it is the worst cancer you can give anyone.
World War III is already happening.
This is a house of cards, and it is in the process of collapsing right now.
You're going to see an economic crash, the likes of which we've never seen.
Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. Today on the channel, it's an honor again to have Stephen Harris, who's the adjunct author of the Nuclear War Survival Skills book, widely regarded as the quintessential nuclear preparedness guide. He serves as a consultant to numerous corporations in the U.S. military, the Department of Defense, among others. He's also a dedicated science educator, recently contributed to an article for the Daily Mail, and is also the CEO of Knowledge Publications, a company focused on advancing hydrogen, biomass, and solar energy systems. Now, as you are the adjunct author of this book, what are your thoughts on potential nuclear scenarios? Like, realistically speaking, there's a lot of doomerism around, you know, once they fire one nuke, it's going to be the end of the world, and you might not even prepare for it. What do you say to people of that mindset, and what are some scenarios you think that could potentially unfold?
Well, one, it's not 1984 anymore. We're not dealing with 20,000 weapons on each side and mutually assured destruction with the Soviet Union and the missiles flying over the North Pole. It's not that anymore. You know, get that out of your head. Their main goal is to have you acquiesce into whatever their interests are, not to flatten your cities. Not saying they might, you know, not flatten one of your cities. Let me
open these maps.
You know, as a show of, you know, we're serious. The bear does bite.
I miss on your computer because if I open all three,
nuclear war. No, I mean one nuke. I mean, there's been 2,221 nuclear devices detonated on the surface, below the ground, and in space on the face of this planet since it came about, and the first one was done in 1945. 2,221, plus or minus a few. We're still here. So one nuke going off is not going to be the end of the world. And so the first thing is to say, it's not 1984. Stop fighting and thinking about the past conflict. You got to think about fifth generational warfare, informational warfare, psychological warfare. It's going to be used as a terror device. Is it going to be smaller than Hiroshima? Is it going to be bigger than Hiroshima? What type of a device it is? And now, you asked me about Annie Jacobson,
actually, I can open them up,
who wrote the book Nuclear War, which was the theoretical implementation. And then you and I, we could come down and write 1,000 ideas for how it might start, and none of them will be correct. It'll be something else other than what we thought of. But the exercise, yes, is a good exercise to think about, but it's going to be probably a singular event or multiple events over in the European theater. They might just hit Berlin, and because Germany stopped supplying them with weapons, or it might be London, or it might be the North Sea as a demonstration where there is no one. It could be a variety
Here, and what we'll
of those
do
situations.
is-
But as many other authors, actually, the idea of North Korea in Jacobson's book launching an intercontinental ballistic missile that's going to take 30 to 45 minutes to fly across the pole and the Pacific and come and hit the United States is really pretty unrealistic, because you should go read her other book, Surprise, Kill, Vanish, and you'd understand that the intelligence apparatus of the major countries, first world countries, is too damn good. We're going to know they're getting ready. We're going to know they're preparing. And, we have ways of intercepting in space, under the sea and many other places, a weapon taking that long to get here, and let alone interdicting it on the ground before it even launches. So it's not like they're just going to have one sitting there and like our Minuteman missiles and go, okay, launch, and blast door goes by and it goes up and it's on the way and we got nothing to do to shoot it down. So what's a much more likely scenario for the United States is what Tom Clancy put forth in many of his books, and it's probably very, very true. Remember, I learned all this from Tom Clancy, is that the weapon is probably already here. We know that the Russians, very likely the Chinese, and other powers already have smuggled in nuclear devices into the United States. They aren't that big. If they smuggle in all the drugs and everything else they can smuggle in a nuclear device. Think of it about the size of you or me. They can smuggle that in. It doesn't give off a lot of radiation. It's very hard to detect, and it can be very stable for a long period of time. So is it possible that North Korea already has one here? Yeah, it's possible. And if they want to attack DC, they don't need to send an intercontinental ballistic missile all the way across the world over to us. All they got to do is drive a truck into downtown DC and clock it off. Or New York, or Atlanta, or Houston, or Los Angeles. I don't think Alberta is really on the target list.
Saskatchewan, actually, but hey.
Sorry, Saskatchewan. I didn't mean to insult you.
Same
Sorry,
thing.
Saskatchewan.
Yeah, we're Alberta's little brother, or we actually were the ones who populated most of the country, but everybody leaves here when they grow up and they realize that things called cars exist. So you said something.
Speaking of which, did we mention I am in my nuclear shelter? I am broadcasting to you from my fallout shelter. That's been in my house that I built in 1999. This is not a blast shelter. It's in the basement. Here's the concrete wall. There's the concrete wall. And there's 4 foot by 4 foot by 8 foot structure with all of my food and other supplies all the way around it, providing the radiological shielding along with the dirt and the concrete on each side, which is this thing that we have that as a basement. Whereas down south, they don't have basements. But I am actually, I don't just talk the talk, I walk the walk. I am in my shelter that's 26 years old.
And so, I mean, that's testament to the fact that you can build a shelter within a basement, as we call them up here, if you have them. So you don't need to go to the extent of building a full-on bunker. Per se, I mean, that might benefit you in circumstances where you're closer to a potential blast zone, possibly.
Yeah, blast radius. But then again, the target map has already changed. And most people don't realize this, but you know what the target list was back in the 80s? The first targets?
The Minuteman missile silos, primarily.
The missile fields. And the next targets were?
Air bases?
The 5-mile long runways. And the third target?
That's a lot
Naval
closer
force.
than 10 miles.
It's all the major road and rail intersections in the United States. The military kill chain is find, fix, finish. So
2.9
they
miles.
know where you are. They fix you. You can't move. They take out all your road junctions and everything else, which usually happen to be in and around major cities, and so thus the city gets flattened, right? But if it's like, why do you, if you want to attack like a refinery, one of the big ones down in Texas, why do you need to attack that when your other attacks have probably broken all of the feed lines going to it of oil from all the other different sources? The refinery without an input or without power is no good. So yeah, find, fix, and finish. And I've literally, Nate, you've heard of stories like people write to me and they go, "Oh my God, there's a bike store 3 blocks down from my house, and it'll be the only source of transportation in a nuclear war. So I know that they're going to target it. What do I do?" And you got to realize our their target priorities are a lot different now. They want to instill fear. They want to instill compliance. So it's going to probably be in the European theater or someplace, or I can migrate here, but one nuclear device, half a dozen nuclear device. I would say it's very reasonable to say 1 would go off 1 month and 6 would go off the following month. Because once it's like Bitcoin breaking 100,000. It's like, okay, sky's the limit, right? It resisted, then it broke through, and now it's fluctuating, above. Once you've broken that limit, it's kind of like asking the girl out for the first date. It's hard. And then once you do, it's like, you have a great date. It's like, hey, do you want another date? You want to go out again? Yeah, sure.
So you don't think that it necessarily entails a mutually assured destruction scenario? And then there's the one other point that I wanted to comment on with respect to shooting down ICBMs. I mean, some people will dispute the fact that if North Korea was to fire an ICBM, that we would have the ability to shoot it down. Obviously, it's traveling at Mach 20 or whatever it is. You'd have to intercept it, I presume, in the early phase, which the U.S. has assets in the region.
We've already intercepted an incoming satellite. Remember the satellite that was deorbiting early that had like 2 tons of hydrazine on it? And they modified one of our THAAD, Theater High Altitude Air Defense missiles on an Aegis class weapons cruiser. They already intercepted an incoming satellite.
How fast is the satellite going?
24 pictures here.
Orbital speed, 18,600 miles per hour. So yeah, we've demonstrated the ability in open source to intercept in multiple phases.
Okay, so I guess, but this is a system that could be overwhelmed.
Sure.
I mean, looking at what the Iranians did in Israel, where they were easily able to overwhelm. I mean, now they have the THAAD system there, so we don't know how that's going to play out, but they only have something like 100 interceptors that they could use at any given time. So, presuming that North Korea has enough decoys, I guess. Anyways,
I doubt they have 2,000 missiles.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
or
know
even 200.
Do we have the question is do we have that many THAAD systems, right? And what is the according to Annie Jacobson, there's something like 42 of these interceptors that are currently active in the United States. But
the better question about North Korea is them being a trigger point. Mm-hmm. What happens if they just attack South Korea and or Japan? Okay, let's say they're the bad boy on the block. They're the loose cannon. So they go ahead and do something. Then China and Russia piles on thereafter. North Korea opens the door and everyone else pours through. In the midst of the confusion. That is a better scenario.
Yeah, it's not going to be an isolated incident, that's for sure. With respect
everyone's looking for an excuse.
With respect to the mutually assured destruction hypothesis, I think your idea is quite novel with respect to having nuclear weapons pre-positioned is something that seems to escape the imagination of most people nowadays, despite the fact that I believe it was the basis for the TV show Jericho, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And probably many a Tom Clancy novel as well. But yeah, this is an angle that many of us have perhaps forgotten about, but wouldn't that not lead then to a broader exchange?
if it was a surprise, if it was smuggled in and hidden, they're going to want to first find out whose it was. And they can do that by measuring the radioisotopes after the explosion. In fact, they can already go right down and say, yeah, this was, our plutonium produced in Hanford in cell number 32 in 1984. I mean, they got such good isotope records and what is produced from that they can actually identify. It's like, this has the signature of a Chinese weapon. This has a signature of a Soviet weapon, made here. This has a signature of another one. And it's like, okay, let's find out whose it was first. The damage has already been done. We got to do a reaction to that. Let's put our shields up, sorting out all of our ships with all our THAAD and every other protection mechanism we have, get the intelligent apparatus going in even a higher gear, and find out exactly who did this, why, and then do a measured appropriate response. I mean, it's like, if I walked up to you, Nate, I go, hi, Nate, how you doing? Boom. I knock you right in the nose and you're bleeding. And that's all I do is you're going to like, Steve, why'd you hit me? I mean, think about it logically. You want to know, why did that crazy thing just happen? Who did it?
Air defense.
I could have been wearing a baklava, and you want to pull it off and see who did it to you.
Somewhere right down here.
Now, I don't think there's going to be a lot of knee jerk, but like I said, go read Andy Jacobson's other, books, Surprise, Kill, Vanish, and maybe you'll understand that missile probably would have never taken off.
But when you look at something like 9/11, I mean, there definitely was a knee-jerk reaction there. So if we're talking about something on a scale much bigger than that, I imagine that plausible deniability or not, they're going to hold somebody to account, and the American people will demand a proportional response.
Right here.
So, you would presume that there would have to be some escalation. But like you, I think that what's been demonstrated in the past few years seems to be that a lot of us thought that there were all these red lines which would immediately elicit a nuclear reaction. And clearly we're in a situation now where Ukraine's firing missiles, with the assistance of NATO, at Russian soil on numerous oblasts, now 3 I think in total so far, with just ATACMS. And obviously a lot of the ISR stuff is feeding into their use of these drones to do deep strikes even past Moscow and St. Petersburg. So, this leads me to believe that perhaps there's more rungs of the escalation ladder than we initially thought, that perhaps the use of a tactical nuke or a demonstration won't necessarily go to the nuclear, full-on nuclear war extent. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, what about the theory that Russia's nuclear arsenal is as good as their conventional arsenal? Woefully inadequate, not up to date, and questionable functionality. Why are they playing a game of Bugs Bunny and Yosemite Sam of I dare you to cross this line? No, I dare you to cross this line. No, I dare you to cross this line. They keep on doing it. I can say one thing is for certain, Nate. What you and I are getting as civilians, I mean, even through the best open source intelligence and everything else and videos and Twitter, it's not the real story. It's not what is really happening. It's not the real motivators. It's not the real objectives of what people are after. We're just dealing with what we're fed and that we can see, and the behind the scenes stuff is going to be completely different situation, which we're not going to really know until after an event.
What did you think of the Russian Orezhnik demonstration?
Real interesting demonstration. 6 warheads coming down out of the sky. Albeit conventional, but they definitely said, these things work. We can target a location and we can hit it with multiple independent reentry vehicles, multiple warheads. That's a theater scale missile, not an intercontinental ballistic missile.
And do you think that changes the equation at all?
The best thing I can say, Nate, is we can't set a date for something to happen. Okay, it's like it can't be the election, it can't be the inauguration, it can't be this date or that. Historically, I mean, look back through our history from 9/11 to the fall of the Soviet Union to Pearl Harbor to the Cuban Missile Crisis. It has all pretty much been out of the blue as far as we're concerned. Not anticipated, not seen. Now, if you want to prepare yourself, and I did this, I refreshed all my supplies and everything else and made sure I topped off everything before the election. Did I think anything was going to happen during the election? No. Did I think something is going to happen when I least expect it? Yes. Did I use that date as like an internal motivator deadline for me to, get this, double check this, make sure this works, make sure I have these are labeled, these are, all functional. And it's like, do I have enough cat treats for my cat for a year? Yes. Okay. It's just little things like that to double check. But whatever happens, it is going to be out of the clear blue sky. I mean, did you have the fall of Assad in Syria on your 2024 bingo card this year, Nate?
Absolutely not, but I just made a video about this very topic and how these things seem to be happening at just a lightning pace and always out of the blue. So for that reason, these are reminders that we should expect the unexpected, and it's a constant reminder of how quickly things can change and deviate from the path.
The number one fundamental thing behind human evolution and human change is communications. The faster you communicate, the faster you change. The faster you change, the faster you communicate. Communications and information flow and change is rapid. Look at what we've done in 25 years since 2000.
Still understand why
as
we went
compared
so far north.
From 2000 to 1975. We didn't even have the personal computer, off the shelf in 1975. And in 2000, it was the dot-com bubble, and computers were wildly available everywhere. And now we're dealing with computers that we're carrying around in our pocket. Basically this is computational power of a crate. This little phone right here of mine, I got 2 terabytes of storage built into this thing. 2 terabytes. I remember talking to an Intel engineer. He goes, in 1969 we were just trying to hopefully to get memory down to $1 a bit, not a byte, a bit. So yes, very good observation. Things are changing quickly. We're going to have more change in the next 10 years, next 10 minutes, next 10 months, than we have in 5 times that in the past. Obviously. Things are moving. And another good example of this, here's another one for you for your nuclear scenarios. You know why we use uranium-235 in our nuclear power plants, right?
Absolutely not.
Because you get plutonium-239 from it. And these are the items that you use to make nuclear devices. Now, if we took all the geniuses that made our first nuclear device and we wanted to say there was no World War II and we want to do this thing called nuclear power, we probably would have started off with thorium and uranium-233 that you can't make into a weapon because it's more efficient, more plentiful, more economic. Taiwan has had a nuclear power plant for 40 years. What do you think they've been doing? Ukraine has had a nuclear power plant going all the way back to the Soviet Union. It is, in fact, Peter Zion, the economist and analyst from Stratfor and of independent fame, he estimates that Taiwan could have a nuclear device in a few weeks. They already got all the material. It's just some assembly required, and the assembly of a nuclear device is pretty straightforward. It's getting the material that's hard. They estimate Ukraine could have one in like 3 or 4 months as well. They got the material. They've been harvesting it out of their reactors for all these decades and refining it and stockpiling it. They just haven't assembled it into a device yet.
So you're saying that we're using a type of nuclear fuel that was designed for weapons and it's less efficient?
It is absolutely designed for weapons. If you go to the the French breeder style reactor, we only use a fraction of a percentage of our fuel that we put into our nuclear reactors today. In fact, there's not one that's been duplicated. There's always been another development in the reactor that they've done in all of them. The Canadians made breeder reactors, and what they did is they used up like almost the entirety of the fuel. You know, all this thing, say, what do we call nuclear waste that we have outside of all the nuclear power plants and in Yucca Mountain and everywhere else, all of that can be fed back into a breeder reactor to make more electricity. Ask any nuclear physicist, it's pretty straightforward. And most of the times that stuff that is quote waste, which is really
simulator PC. We're
waste.
take flights
I did an intro to a book that said why waste is good. And when you have waste, you have an abundance of something. You're making it and using it so good that you have an abundance, and that abundance becomes a resource. Well, usually that waste has too much of plutonium-240 in it, which very much wants to stop the fissile rate. It wants to, what's the word I'm looking for? It wants to go off early, so it wants to fizzle. It wants to have the nuclear reaction is going towards criticality, and then out of nowhere comes the stray neutron, and the whole thing goes, ah! And you get, 1/100th your yield, and 240 is not good for making implosion device where 239 is. So a lot of our waste fuel may very well have that in it, but it can still be used in other methods to make energy for the entire world. And it's just being stored in large casks safely in a secure environment, waiting for us to utilize the waste as a resource in the future. Someday we will be mining our landfills as well.
And so what about Iran? Are they using this nuclear grade type of fuel? Like nuclear weapons?
They are making uranium-235 with centrifuges.
We'll have to get the 24.
Now, here's a fun story, because one of my mentors who was at Los Alamos in 1940s, and he's the one actually who set the time for the first atomic weapon. He was telling me the story of exactly why did we do uranium-235 at Oak Ridge National Laboratories right next to the Tennessee Valley Authority, which is hydropower, massive hydropower. Because you need a great deal of electricity to run these gas centrifuges in order to separate. See, you want uranium-235, and it is 0.7% of uranium-238. Well, as far as you and I are concerned, it's the same chemical, even though it's a different isotope. So it's hard to separate. So you turn it into a gas, and you spin it around, and the heavier gas goes to the outside, the lighter gas goes to the inside, and you do the gas separation that way. But we only had one device in World War II that was a gun type weapon. It was two pieces of 235, one shot into the other. Here's a piece of history. You know what the propellant was that shot one half of 235 into the other half of 235 to do Hiroshima?
Not a clue.
Black powder. Black powder and a Navy artillery cannon, specially machined and made for it. But anyways, they were going to do the project, and they just discovered they didn't have enough copper. There wasn't enough copper in the United States to make the cyclotrons to run them at Oak Ridge off of power from TVA. They needed more wire. So do you know where they got the wire?
I have no answers to these questions, Steve.
They went to Roosevelt and said, hey, we need to borrow the silver from the U.S. Mint, our silver reserves. And it's like, you can't have it. It's like, we're not going to destroy it. We're just going to turn it into wire. And they made the wire for the cyclotrons out of our silver reserves. And then when we were done with that, we gave them back the silver, and they melted it back down into bullion, and it was part of our silver reserve for our currency. But it took a tremendous amount of energy to make that first 235 device, which is why they went to a plutonium type device for weapons 2, 3, 4, and 5, because they could make
not the 24, but I got the one before it.
Less than 10, not more than 10 but
We'll have to
greater
take
than
up to
5 a year.
24.
Are you saying then that because Iran is in possession of this 235, it's not as easy to make a nuclear bomb?
Oh, it's much easier to make it with
it's easier.
235. Yeah,
Okay,
it's
I thought-
harder to make the 235. It's just
More
it's
energy
easier to
intense.
make the device.
It requires more energy? That's what you're saying.
There was actually more energy used in electricity to separate the 235 from the 238
235
from
going
the
in.
electricity from the dams of the DVA than there was in all the energy released in Hiroshima. That includes the light, the radiation, the blast, everything. There was more energy. And so I said to Ed, I go, so you're telling me Hiroshima was basically a water bomb? He thinks and he looks at me and he giggles. He goes, yeah, it was kind of a water bomb because there was many times more electricity used to make the 235 for that first device. Remember, this was the first one. Than there was that in the device itself. A little bit of history for you.
Interesting. So, in terms of what you think that Jacobson's book might be getting wrong,
There's
in
a 40%
terms of
chance the Federal Reserve
mutually
will have to
assured
pivot back
destruction,
to
because we
raising
are
rates
told
next
that
year.
nuclear war is going to make life unsustainable afterwards. And I recently did a video on this, and I think it says in the Nuclear War Survival Skills book, part of the reason why this theory was floated was, in fact, by our adversaries who were trying to demoralize people and get them to not prepare so that we would be less prepared.
Now
And we
listen
would
to
just,
this one.
cease in our
U.S.
preparations
intelligence
while they
estimates
continue
that Iran is
to
preparing
build
to carry
out
out
their civil
blank
defense
against
infrastructure.
Israel before the
The amount of
inauguration.
myths, if you go on the Daily Mail website and you read the myths, I picked out 3 pages, some of the best ones, because there's myths in the book, but I picked out what people actually said this week of why and categorize them, for our conversation. So we could talk about the scenarios and then talk about the myths.
Sure.
Because I think Jacobson's book is a very legitimate scenario. There are flaws in it. Yeah. Am I an expert, in launching missiles at the USA? No. Could Jacobson be right? Yes. Could part of her be right? Yes. Did she write a good book? Absolutely, she wrote a good book.
So, in terms of nuclear winter, then, can you maybe expand a bit on what we discussed in that video and why it's an unlikely scenario?
Yeah, I mean, all the nuclear devices can't compete with Mount Pinatubo. Okay, their volcanoes will change the climate of the Earth for like a year and a half, and have historically done that. But the amount of power released from a volcano erupting like those big ones, it makes what man does look infinitesimal in power. So,
So why do you think then?
what was your main question?
Well, the main question was with respect to nuclear winter, and you kind of answered it with respect to the volcanoes.
The idea was the nuclear device would go off, the mushroom cloud would go up, it would create a great deal of fires because when it goes off, you have a prompt light pulse, which induces, heat into everything it hits, Terminator, it's like you're going to need 2 million sunblock because it's going to be an awfully bad day. It catches stuff on fire, to a significant radius measured in miles, anything from curtains to dried leaves to whole structures. And then the blast wave comes by. And the thermal pulse for starting fires is actually larger than the blast wave pulse to blow out your windows. So you create square miles of fire, okay? And all that smoke goes up in the atmosphere. All that smoke is basically carbon. And, for all intents and purposes, it's unburnt stuff that goes up in the air. And so a lot of it is going to be pure carbon, just like charcoal, black. The idea is it goes up the upper stratosphere and blocks out the sunlight, cools the planet, and you have a winter and everything. Well, there just isn't enough of it.
So if, let's say, what is the threshold for a nuclear winter scenario? Like, is it the detonation
There
of
isn't one.
a thousand
There's not enough.
bombs?
There wasn't enough devices when we had 20,000 devices each.
So you're
to
saying
do it.
that if all 20,000 nukes went off simultaneously,
40.
if all, let's say all 40,000 went off, which now would be probably closer to 10,000.
Yep.
Let's just presume, okay, 10,000 nukes go off within a short period of time. You don't think that's sufficient smoke to block out the sun to any significant extent?
Science is clear. Science and the math is absolutely clear. You
So
look
why
at
is
the
this still
amount.
why is this myth still being perpetuated then? Because this is now entered the common, language of people, and people are presuming that that is just the de facto outcome.
You're the one with a psychology degree. Tell me why people keep on believing false and stupid things.
Well, I mean, there's a few theories, I guess, but I mean, I think it's not so much that people are
Nope,
believing
they
it; it's
did
that it's
not
being
like it at all,
promoted by
David.
the media and the government, essentially, or the government is sort of tacitly promoting it by not saying this isn't actually the case when they
They
should.
did say it. The original Nuclear War Survival Skills was published by Oak Ridge National Laboratories, written by Crescent Carney. That's a division of the U.S. government. It says right in the book, underneath myths, nuclear war is false.
But while this myth is being perpetuated in the I guess just in the media, that nobody's stepping in to say, actually, this is untrue, because I think that puts people in a fatalistic mindset where it discourages them to take the precautions because they don't think it's survivable, which doesn't serve the public interest from a civil protection standpoint. So
Same thing with EMP. I call EMP the boogeyman of the nuclear world. It's what everyone's scared of, and that's what's least likely to happen. And everyone puts it to a test. Is like, lose it EMP proof? Well, then I don't want it. And what do they end up doing? They end up talking to themselves going, well, why should I? There's no hope. Why should I prepare? I can't survive. I can't do this. And they end up finding reasons not to. Fear in the inaction. Remember this. Fear in the inaction that comes from it is the worst cancer you can give
FYI,
anyone.
Lee is live over on YouTube.
Maybe that answers the question about nuclear winter, mutually assured destruction, 1984 scenarios. How many people are talking about hope? How many people are talking about, the spirit? I got another guy in here who comments about, yeah, there'll be destruction, but, the spirit of everyone will come together and solutions will be found. People will be evacuated out of Britain. And, ships will just show up. And remember in 9/11, the ferries? The ferries just started hauling people off of Manhattan left and right and across the Hudson. Hell, even the Miracle on the Hudson, they came running.
I would say that's, well, I appreciate the optimism. I think that might be a little overly optimistic. Jacobson might make the argument that it's better to scare the living daylights out of people so that, and I'm not saying that this is something I agree with, so that governments will, be less likely to utilize that option. Because if people think it's survivable, or if a military general who's in charge of overseeing whether or not to launch, if he thinks that it's survivable, there's a greater chance then that he might push that button or go, use that option.
They know it's survivable. The top people know it's survivable, yet it is cataclysmic, and no one wants to be the one that does that first. No one wants to be the one with that video on Twitter or X and everything of the mushroom cloud going up over Los Angeles. So no one wants to be the one that does that. It is unthinkable. And the thing is, there are things by far worse than a nuclear device. I keep on telling people they aren't that big. We're talking about square miles of destruction. We're talking about a radius of less than 10 miles, usually less than 5 miles. The weapons are a lot smaller today because we're more accurate, and they're expensive as hell. So why would you want to put all that material to make a 5 megaton weapon when you could use all that material to make 20 quarter megatons that you can put right on X marked spot. The people making these things aren't dumb. They have a budget too, even though it's a big one.
Right.
And so they aren't as big as they used to be. And even then, it's not bigger. There are only two threats to humanity on the face of the planet. One is an asteroid coming in and doing what it did to the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. The other threat is a virus that can kill more people than anything else. You go ask the scientists what keeps them up at night. Go read Ken Albeck's book from '96 called Biohazard. He was the chief biological warfare scientist for the Soviet Union that defected in 95 or 94, and he wrote the book Biohazard in '96. He outlines Russia's weaponized everything, weaponized smallpox, weaponized tularemia, weaponized anthrax, weaponized bubonic plague, pneumonic plague. And you ask any of the scientists that deal with mass destruction and threats to the public, you ask them what keeps them up the most at night, it's a biological viral weapon. I mean, let alone, it's not just against us. I mean, there's agricultural bioweapons. They can go after our poultry. They can go after our cows with hoof and mouth, which is even more frightening than, looking at chickens and poultry. There's something called wheat rust. They can go after our wheat, our corn, our forms of subsistence and everything else. And, literally the Bible is full of plagues and locusts and, other such things that devastated entire countries and communities. The Irish potato famine.
Well, that's interesting because to me, what you're saying means that they are potentially more likely to utilize that option because they know that it is something that is not going to be as globally catastrophic. I mean, Stephen Harris.
Oh, it'll be more globally catastrophic.
Said it here first. Stephen Harris said it here first, folks. He said that, after they launch the first nuke, they're going to tweet about it on X. So he's not of the belief that the EMP. So tell us a little bit about why you don't think EMPs are a threat.
Well, it's in the list of myths here, and they're saying, oh, nuclear device go off, it's going to be an EMP effect, everything else. There is an EMP effect from a firecracker. You can put a firecracker in a plastic trash can, wrap wire around it, put a voltmeter on it, set off the firecracker. It creates a high temperature plasma on Earth's magnetic field, and you can measure it through the pickup wires and make the needle on your meter go bloop when it goes off. The radius of an EMP on a surface or an airburst above a city, so I'm talking thousands of feet, okay, not hundreds of miles of feet, and the EMP effect is less than the blast wave. So it's like bright light, your radio goes off, and then the blast wave blows you down the road at 600 miles an hour. So what you're talking about, though, is an EMP at like twice the altitude of the space station. And it has to be a big one, a big device that actually depresses the Van Allen radiation belts through the Earth's magnetic field, creating all sorts of hell. And if that was done to the United States, you would kill. If you did a Soviet-level EMP, and people go, oh, I got this EMP bag. I got a Mylar bag. I got an EMP shield. As soon as the EMP goes off, I'm going to pull out my phone and have my videos and my TikTok and everything else. And it's like, you don't understand. As soon as you pull it out of your bag, there's another one going off tomorrow. An EMP is not a singular event. It's a multiple event. It's today, tomorrow, in 4 days, next week, at the end of the month. They keep on putting more of them out. Why it doesn't harm the military is because they have what's called HEMP, hardening against electromagnetic protection. If you've ever seen an emitter radio and how big it is versus like a Baofeng radio is this big, a military emitter radio is like this big, right? That's because all of the electronics in there have metal oxide varistors and other protection devices literally on every leg of every silicon piece in that entire radio. So when it sees a voltage higher than is acceptable on that lead, it clamps down on it and shorts it to ground, thus protecting the electronics so it can survive pulse after pulse after pulse after pulse after pulse. They don't shield really in F-16. It's hardened against an electromagnetic pulse to begin with. But I mean, if you, good God, see, the people, they know it will kill 98% of the population of the United States in a year. If an EMP hits from San Diego to Maine, what do you think the response of the United States is going to be?
An EMP expert I just spoke to said that while it's true that the military equipment is hardened, that they still rely on the U.S. power grid. So while it might be true that their devices will still function, will they have electricity to power it is the question in that scenario you're talking about.
Yeah, they got their own power. They do have their own power systems for critical infrastructure. I was actually in Cheyenne.
They have backup power, but their primary power source is.
I was in Cheyenne Mountain. I saw what they have. Okay, it's
right.
gargantuan.
Well, that's continuity of government. That's not like the general military. Like the general military is attached to the civilian power grid. They might have diesel backup generators, but yeah, sure. Like what you're talking about is something that who knows? I mean, Cheyenne Mountain is. I mean, we could speculate on that if you want in terms of what else is out there now. I presume that there's a lot bigger complexes than Cheyenne Mountain nowadays. But
well, Cheyenne Mountain was a command center. I mean, I can, one way to know if someone was really at Cheyenne Mountain, you ask them the name of the ducks on the ponds of water that are stored underneath the mountain.
The ducks.
But they have their own power. Some places have their own hydropower. And that's just not going to stop. I mean, the military isn't worried about losing its power. Hell, the military doesn't even have shelters on major bases for it's enlisted, for the people on the base. I was just up at the air show working for Air Force Association, and I was on the Selfridge base, and there's no shelters. There's no shelters up there. There's no shelters. And it was one of the first air bases in the United States. There's no shelters for the general military. It's one of those long runways. They figure it's going to be gone.
So you're saying that EMP from the nuclear blast, air burst, ground burst, not a big deal, but it is a legitimate threat from a high altitude.
From a spatial one and it's not a small nuclear device, it's a gargantuan nuclear device. They got to get it up there.
How many megatons do you figure it have to be?
Someplace in megatons. And we just recently, I think, proved in open source that North Korea actually created a fusion device rather than a fission device, which is monumental because the people that taught me that literally a fusion device like the Teller-Ullman design is 1,000,000 times harder and 1,000,000 times more expensive than a fission device. So for North Korea to pull off a legitimate fusion device, which according to all of the external readings of our measuring of what they did underground, says it was too damn big of a device to have been a simple fission device. Even though we've made fission devices bigger than smaller fusion devices, it's just a lot of material and it's very expensive. So the likelihood of them going to that level, I mean, they can't even keep the lights on for the country. If you look at the satellite photos of North Korea, where do you think they're going to get the electricity to make all the material for a fusion device? But can they get material from other countries? Yeah.
So
do they have the will? Yeah. Will they find a way? Possibly.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have devices now? Yes. Does Pakistan? Yes. Does India? Yes. I think even South Africa does.
So just so people remember that we're referencing a lot of this stuff. Stephen's the adjunct author of this book, and there's a chapter right at the beginning called Nuclear War Myths. And so if anybody thinks that Steven's talking out of his butt, go and read that book and you'll quickly realize that he's not. Okay. And
you can get the book for free at that website, nuclearwarsurvivalskills.com. The original version is free to download. There's no sign up. There's no funnels, no tricks, no nothing. Go get the original version. And if you like it, you can get the updated version that I spent God knows how many months writing from Nate at Canadian Preparedness.
it really is a good book. I mean, it really is a great book. People really need to, just open a few pages and you'll quickly see what I mean. It's very
the first
easy.
34 pages of the original book.
Russia
if you do
has
anything, just
received
read the
another
first
batch,
34 pages of the original book.
57s and SU-34s.
So in terms of myths, then we've talked about a few things. Is there any other really big myths that irritate you when you hear people talking about it?
Nate, it all boils down to this. People find reasons not to. And when COVID started, I developed the
I was
saying,
listening to Lee
I
there.
ended up being
He
very
seems to
blunt,
think
very blatant to
Russia's
people. And
fixing
I'd
to
say,
do something to
shut
the
up.
Baltics.
Stop finding reasons not to do it. Start finding reasons
That's why
to
we've been
do
up
it.
here looking at this weird
If you're
pattern.
going to want to survive
We've
what's
just
coming
mapped
up,
out everything to be able
albeit
to take
a
care of problems as
hurricane,
they arise.
an earthquake, an ice storm, your neighbor, going crazy in your car with a bat, you are going to have the want. You're going to have to have the desire to live,
looking at all these
to
trucks
protect your
that's lined up
family. For those that you
on this
love,
road.
you're going to have the want, the confidence
This is
of yourself.
an invasion force.
And it's like, this is a hill you're dying on. Look at the people in North Carolina and
These trucks have been
Georgia
here forever.
that were hit with the catastrophic flooding effects of what wasn't
would
even a
kinda
major
back up,
hurricane
But
that
they've
dumped
got
all the rain in
supplies
that
needed
area.
inside of them already.
I mean, the way you know this from your education, how do you unite
goes on for
a
miles.
squabbling village or tribe or population? You give them an external threat. You have to have
you can
faith
see
in
how
your
far that
common
goes.
person, in your neighbor.
Here's the border.
Everyone around
all the
you
way
is a
down to here.
resource. And I came up with a saying that I got famous for back in the survival
Same
podcast
thing
days.
we've got going
And
on
I said, it is easier to feed your neighbors than it is to shoot them.
over here.
Of course, one person comes up to me and goes, I noticed you didn't say not to shoot your neighbors,
This
but
runs
it's
on
just
for
easier.
miles, and
I go, yeah,
double
it's
stacked.
easier. I mean, what are your neighbors, Nate? Is one an electrician? Is one a nurse? How
There's
far
border.
away does a doctor that lives? Okay, an electrician, a plumber, anyone, a car mechanics, any one of the skilled
it's up beside
trades
this big
or the
training
engineerings and the sciences. How many of these people make up your personal
Runs for
community?
miles.
It's through all of them and with them that you survive. Now, you might be eating your wonderful freeze-dried food that you have. You'll have beans and rice and corn for them. And believe me, if they don't eat it on day one, they'll happily eat it on day
You can
two.
see how long that
So there's nothing to say.
runs.
You got to
Runs from
have
here up to
all
here.
of your preparedness for everyone else. But first thing I did on 9/11 is I went and withdrew the last $180 I had to my name out of the bank in 2001. And I went north by about 30 minutes to a grain elevator, and I spent, I
We've
think,
got the same
100,
deal here.
it's either 109 or $89. I got 600 pounds of corn, and I brought it back in my pickup truck because we had no idea what was coming next. Were those
We got the
planes
same deal
trailing a
up here.
biological out their rear as they were flying into the World Trade Centers? We
I
didn't
think
know.
it's this one.
And I went up and
Oh,
I
this
got
one's
that
not.
extra corn because corn compared to wheat is very affordable and it's also very
It's this
flexible.
one.
And sorry, I'm
look at
sitting
this.
Indian style in my shelter and my legs are falling asleep. But I
Backed
went
up.
out and bought 600 pounds of corn for my neighbors, for myself, and everyone else because I had everything and the knowledge and the grinders and everything to turn that into food for those around me.
Well, you're talking about budgetary constraints on people, and that's
Yeah,
something
pretty
a
much,
lot
Pam.
of people can relate with nowadays. And I think
And
it's
FYI,
quite
for
timely
people that
that
just
you
came in
partook
here,
in that article
North
for the
Korea is
Daily
planning
Mail,
to send additional troops and
entitled "How
equipment
to
to
Survive a
Russia.
Nuclear Apocalypse for 72 Pounds." So, what were some of the tips that you provided people in that
If I
article?
come over
He
here,
priced in everything.
we
He
pull up
priced
these
in a
maps again.
22-pound shovel. You know, everything is taxed over there and everything else. You know, so he priced in a 22-pound shovel and, you know, a saw and
Well, a third of
everything
that
else.
was a shovel?
Yeah, I mean, a pound is worth more than a dollar.
So,
and
so the shovel is to dig an emergency.
oh yeah,
shelter.
he priced that in. He
Okay.
put a
gonna
number in the
trade
title
that
to grab
one out.
people's attention,
Okay.
For the Google Earth one.
So,
which was a good idea.
yeah, and in the
Back and
book
have it up
you explain to people how you can
This is Belarus
dig
map.
a hole to survive it.
Now all of these
Yeah,
are
I mean, I told him, I go, look,
bases.
you really, they call backhoes
Along the
JCBs in England, okay? I go,
Literally
look,
the border
if something's really coming, what you
Okay.
really want to do, you want to have an extra copy of the book,
They're
a couple
lined
extra
up all
copies.
the way down through
You get your neighbors together and everyone else. You go find a guy that has a backhoe, like a landscaping company. And I already identified all of them around me in the 90s when I was doing a lot of this work. And I had it on a map of who had what. You know, great big backhoes, like the ones you see on Gold Rush for digging gold. I went and identified them, and there's football fields, like American football fields, not soccer. Now there's soccer fields too, all
There's
around
equipment
me at different
warehouse.
schools. And it's like, just start digging a trench with that great big hoe. It's so easy with that thing. It's like about 3-4 feet wide, 4 feet deep, much like this shelter
We
you
have
see
it,
I'm in
Sensei.
right now. Just dig it all the way back and keep on digging and go and get doors
take
out of houses and fences and everything and lay them
trade
across it. And then put waterproofing in forms of plastic
that
sheeting
back
and
out for
tarps and
that.
shower curtains, anything over it, and then start
also
putting
you-
2 to 3 feet of earth in a mound over these things, over your doors that are straddling your narrow trench. It's like, yeah, you're in an area 3 feet by 4 feet, maybe 20 feet long, depending how many people you got in there. There's nothing to say that they can't dig that thing the entire 100 yards of the football field, and there can't be 20 families in there with like 8 different openings going in and out of it.
Not registering.
And it's like, I don't want to do all that work. You know how hard it is to dig a hole? It's like, I want to go to the guy with the backhoe. It's like, hey, you know, LA got nuked, DC got nuked, New York got nuked. It's like, how long before they think you nuked Detroit? Oh, I don't know, man. My family's scared. My wife is petrified. We're trying to keep the kids away from the television.
Goodness.
And it's like, hey, man, here, I'm going to give you a copy of this book. You got enough, you know, you get your backhoe. We're going down to the, you know, the field, the football field at the intermediate school. And it's like, we're going to start digging trenches and we're going to start doing it. And we're going to let people replicate what we're doing. I'm going to tell them and show them, and we're all going to be there.
This back up.
And together we're all going to get through this. Now, I'm in a 4 foot by 4 foot by 8 foot radiation shelter. Does that mean I have to be in here all the time? No. I got a protection factor of about 250 to 300 in here. So I'm getting about 300 times less radiation that there would be outside. And all the people in this article in the comments all talked about England getting hit, London getting hit by a nuke and them being underneath it. They never once thought maybe Russia gets angry and nukes Berlin or Warsaw. And the winds are going in the right way that circulates the radiation back over London.
Goodness.
You just need a fallout shelter for a lot of your situations. I can still come out of my shelter and go up and use the shower or the bathroom. I got water for that. I have alternative toilets. I got sitting next to me 75 gallons of, 80 gallons of water. I got more. This entire place is lit up off my battery bank that's not in here. It's 12 feet that way against the other wall. It doesn't have to be in here. This is just a spot where I can sleep and stay. And I got my
Pick that up, sir.
different radiation meters. You got your little one that you sell? See, I got a carbon monoxide meter. I can heat myself with natural gas or propane down here. I got a couple different, you know, radiation meters and everything else, so I can measure the radiation inside, outside, know what I'm getting inside, know what's outside, and everything else. And it's like, maybe I only need to sleep in here. Maybe I spend 18 out of 24 hours in here. I can measure it and quantify it And this just lets me, I don't have to live in here,
Let me pick this back
but
up.
this just protects me from the radiation that's on the outside. Now, I benefit from having a basement. I'm not really anticipating Detroit being flattened by a blast. If so, well, I'm far enough away that, I might get all my windows blown out upstairs and a few other things, but, I probably
You've
won't
never had to
blow
do
the
this
house
to me
over at
before.
600 miles an hour. But in all my food and my other stuff, my flour and water and cooking oil and everything is all around me. In my water, it's all around me in layers, such that it's radiation shielding. I got a 55-gallon barrel right here at the entrance, right there, and that is on a dolly. So even if I wanted to prevent more radiation, less radiation coming through this opening, I just pull the 55-gallon barrel on the dolly up to the opening, and I can block off the opening if I have to reduce the radiation coming in. And it's already holding my water. It's not even my primary water. So water is a very good radiation shield. You can do this with cinder blocks. You can do this with milk crates full of dirt. It's just endless the number of ways you can do this. You and I talked about me coming up there when we first started, and it's like, hey, let's make a shelter in your shop. Let's take a shelter right out of the book and let's adapt it for, in your shop and film the whole thing and show everyone that, you can do that.
And this is good information too, because it's just like any piece of gear. I mean, you can go out and buy the $100,000 bunker, which is fine. It's dual purpose, great quality stuff over at Atlas. But it's just like you can spend $1,000 on a knife, or you can maybe spend $20 on a knife. It's not going to do the job perhaps as good. It's not going to look as nice, but it'll do the job. And I think what you're saying is important, because there's a lot of people right now who are on a very tight budget and they're worried about this stuff. And I think what you're saying is very reassuring to know that you can do this on a very limited budget if necessary. It really just is a matter of keeping yourself out of the radiation for the first couple of weeks.
Actually, it's more like 3 days. No, I'm not saying that as a hard and fast rule of thumb for you to take to the bank, but the it says, the half-life is 4 days, or the half-life's 4 billion years. Which one's worse? The short half-life is the worst, and it dies off the quickest. And so the shorter the half-life, the more danger it is, but it's also the quicker you can come out of your shelter, because there's the less radiation that there is in the entire situation.
And I guess it depends on where on the map you are. It could be, it's going to depend on the proximity to the fallout.
Well, tell you what, here's the ultimate solution, okay? I got a vest for this little creature here, and I put this radiation
That's a different one from last time. Is that the same one that you had last time?
No, she died a year ago.
Okay.
Juliet died a year ago. Tier 1 Tabby died of kidney failure, but I can attach this radiation meter to her, and she's trained. I ring a bell outside, and there's treats. So she runs outside. The Geiger counter, actually the skinulator, reads the radiation. She comes back in when I ring another bell. I get the outside radiation measurement.
So but isn't the cat going to die then from radiation?
No.
That looks new.
No, I just want to know how much is out there.
You just pissed off every cat lover on the channel. You realize that?
No, if you knew how spoiled this thing was.
Hey, I mean, you got to do what you got to do.
You're not going to get a lethal dose, pretty much. Even at 100 rads an hour, even 1,000 rads an hour, like full fallout from the missile fields. You got to be outside half hour or more to get a full lethal dose of radiation. I mean, literally, I can get up and go outside for whatever reason. If there's 100 millirads of radiation outside, which is busting the OSHA limit of 50 millirads a year in 1 hour, I can go outside, and as long as I'm not inhaling the radioactive particles or drinking them or something like that, I'm absolutely positively, fine. I can go out and get radiation exposure. The numbers are 3, 25, and 100. You don't want more than 3 rads a day. You can do that every day for a long period of time. Crescent Carney and Edward Newark and others have proved this. Ed set the number of the permissible exposure level for a fighter pilot at 25 rads because that's where there was a biological blood detection change, and 100 rads
This
of
is what
total
1410's
exposure
been looking
over
at.
like a day, a week, an hour, whatever. Sometime something short, not a year. 100 rads is LD 1%. That's where you are at
Then
a
all the
1%
sites in
chance of
Kaliningrad.
dying.
Well,
That's
there's a
where you're
nuclear
probably going to
site
lose your
somewhere.
hair and probably puke. Is at a
I've
total
got it on
dose of
local map.
100 rads in a short period of time, measured in hours, days, and or weeks. Not 100 rads over a year or over 10 years or over a lifetime. You know, despite
anyway,
what people think,
That's
the
what
other
they
thing,
was doing.
yeah, there's something called linear no threshold, which is false,
If I can see that
which
nuclear
says
stuff.
radiation is cumulative throughout your entire life, and it's not.
Rehook.
And linear no threshold says, okay, one person jumps off a 1,000-foot cliff, right? Are they going to be dead?
Probably.
No parachute, no wingsuit. One person jumps off a 1,000-foot cliff, they're dead. If 1,000 people, is linear no threshold says, then if 1,000 people jump off a
More
1-foot
likely we'll have
curb,
to do this.
one of them will die.
Wow,
So if you have
OBS is
1,000
giving me
people
such
jump off a
problems
1-foot
tonight.
curb onto the street, do you think any one of them is going to die, Nate?
Yeah, if it's an old lady with a bad hip, possibly.
No. I'm talking about you and me. Not even better than me. And that's what it says. If one person dies,
I get what you're
1,000
saying, yeah.
rads, and 1,000 people get 1 rad, then 1 out of the 1,000 will die. And that, you know, linear no threshold has been proven to be a myth, just like nuclear winter.
Is there any other
going to
considerations
Iran.
with that 72 pounds that you would advise people to do
96.
besides a shovel?
I would say spend the money and get an extra copy of Nuclear War Survival Skills to bribe the guy with the backhoe to dig the damn hole for you. I mean, literally, a guy with a backhoe, and you know, you knock the doors out of your house using like a Diablo blade, just ripping right through the hinges. You can literally build that entire
35
shelter. Yeah, I mean, if you and I did that, I bet you and I could do it in less than an hour.
VIP plane.
Really just a few cents worth of diesel.
And a backhoe. Why use your hands when you can use power equipment, and you can get the power equipment for the price of, here, you want an extra copy of this book? I'm going to show, I need you to dig some trenches for me, and we'll dig some for you and your family.
I mean, these are things that I would say a person should do well in advance, but something like that is more impromptu, right? Like it's not, I suppose.
No, I mapped them all out. I had 12 of them mapped out within a mile of my house of where to go to get a backhoe.
Just holes that were pre-dug, or you're talking
No, backhoes to dig holes, trenches. To go to the football field and dig trenches, or to do it in my backyard, or do it in their backyard. But principally, we're going to go to the football field and dig them up.
I mean, that is a solution, but it still is ideal to have something done in advance, right? Because you don't know if you're going to have enough time to dig or go and haggle with a guy who just happens to have a backhoe and is free that day. You know, you want to do this ahead of time. If anything, even just pre-digging a trench and, you know, whatever, there's all kinds of uses for, I guess, a hole in the ground.
I would do something inside your house first before I dug a trench outside. I mean, if nukes went off in Europe right now and I was with you, I'd go, come on, Nate, we're going to dig some trenches and everything else. If you were in an area. And, you know, and those might not even be for you. Those might be for your employees. It might be for the neighbors around your business and around your house and everything else. You know, if nukes were popping off in other places in the world, I would be digging trenches. If they weren't popping off like they are right now, I'd be doing some variation of this with buckets and dirt or cinder blocks or sandbags.
Inside the house is what you're saying.
Yes, inside the house. You can even do it in a closet underneath the stairs. Other people have reinforced cargo containers. Keep in mind, I said reinforced. You just can't bury a sea can, a cargo container. The walls will collapse in. Ask your buddy at Atlas. Also, I can't say enough good things about Atlas Survival Shelter. You know, that man will give you, he wouldn't cheat you if his life depended on it, and he'd give you the shirt off his back.
He's a cool dude.
He is the best.
Okay, so in terms of besides getting the book, then is there anything else you can think of that? I mean, there's a wealth of information in the book, and we've done
There
that.
is a whole section in the book
warehouse with
on
parts for
pre-crisis
drones
preparation.
worth $16 million.
There's a whole section in
has
the
been
book on
destroyed
pre-crisis preparation.
in Russia.
So you want to get in advance of a crisis what you can't get after the crisis happens. And I got one of the simplest methods of food storage for a person. And when I thought I couldn't make it any simpler, I made it simpler, and it's on my website. And I call it the freezer method. So you go into, well, it's not Walmart where you're at. It's Canadian Tire, right? But you
We
go
have
in
Walmart.
Walmart.
We have lots of Walmarts.
Jordan,
So
foreign
you see
ministers
all
are
of
there
these
to
meats
visit
and
Syria
cheeses that aren't refrigerated.
Monday.
They're hanging on hang tags and everything else. There's a bunch of shelf-stable food in there. And it's good for what? A year? 2? 5? 6 months? How long do you think that food is good for if you freeze it at -5 in a freezer?
A lot longer.
Decades, right? So the idea is you go to the store and you get a lot of these foods that are shelf stable and are usually pretty delicious. You're going to have what most people could consider snacks are going to become a meal, and you're going to freeze them. So when the power fails,
S&P 500 by the largest
all
amount
you
in
do
history.
is open your freezer, because now they just begin their life as being shelf stable, and that
Not
is
much,
a very
but
easy
they've
way to
formed a new
build up a
government,
month of
Tracy.
food,
So
or
you're gonna
2,
get a lot of
or 3,
visits.
or more. But first, let's get you started. Let's start with saying we want to have a good month. And you will literally see me in that video going through the store with my camera, showing you what I bought, me buying it, and me freezing the stuff and everything else, and
The
why
Syria
this is
government has
stable, why
barred
this
all
is not.
Iranian planes,
We have a lot of
including civilian
cheeses
ones, from
like
its airspace.
Laughing Cow and Baby Bell cheese that are in the cooler section, but they're shelf stable. It's like eggs. Eggs are shelf stable, yet we have them in the refrigerated section all the time. It's just part of our culture. And in
And
case
again,
anyone's
I
wondering,
took this a minute
she's
ago.
getting love below
North
the camera.
Korea is going to send
can
more
see her
troops
tail
and
popping
equipment
out.
to Russia.
So, well, I want to thank you for coming out today, and I really would encourage people to go and check out this book and check out the previous videos that we've done with
Trump's
Steve.
team
Where can
seeks to
people
pull out
find
of the
more
World Health
information on what you
Organization
do?
Day one.
The best way is at shop.harris1234.com, or you can also just go to harris1234.com. There's a wealth of information. You can go to Nuclear War Survival Skills.
They've had an oil
That's
spill
with
in
an S.
Peru.
Where's my book?
And stained
Juliet?
the beaches.
She was sitting on the book. So that with a www and a .com after it. You can go there, download the book for free. Like I said, there's no funnel, there's no upsell, there's no sign up. You can just download it. I pay for the bandwidth.
Download it, but make sure you have a paper copy, because you might not have the internet, or
If you want it right now, you can download it right now and buy a copy from Nate or Amazon or wherever you want.
well, you could
if
download it and print it off. I mean, if a person has a printer, they can do that, but that's kind of a pain in the ass too. So.
Well, the original copy is like 283 pages. I think this is 343 pages. But
That's
yes,
about all
if
I
you
got
want to
for you
print
for
it
right now.
off,
We'll be back in about
because I have
15,
this thing
20 minutes.
printed
We'll
on
be right back.
demand in 10 different countries.
Yeah.
So they'll print it and ship it to you right away. It's not going across the Atlantic or the Pacific to you. They even print it in Japan.
Good stuff. Well, I want to thank you for coming out today. And guys, make sure you go and pick up that book and check out those websites for more info. Thanks a lot
And
for
if you're
coming
in
out.
if you're in Canada, I really want to encourage you to just Nate's the one that brought you me. He's the one that brought you this information. It's a $20-something book, US. Please go get it from Canadian Preparedness. And
Why
you ship
not?
to the USA as well, even for free for like orders over a certain amount.
Yeah, so there's lots of options for sure. But anyways, we got to get going here. So thanks a lot, Steve, for coming out.
Thank you very again for having me on, Nate. And remember, it all comes down to you wanting to survive and you finding a way and you figuring it out. It all comes down to your drive, your desire, your want. So please find it and use it.
The best way to support this channel is to support yourself by gearing up at CanadianPreparedness.com, where you'll find high-quality survival gear at the best prices, no junk, and no gimmicks. Use discount code PREPPINGGEAR for 10% off. Don't forget, the strong survive, but the prepared thrive. Stay safe.
Of all the species that have ever existed on Earth, 99% of them are gone. Most of those were wiped out during what are known as mass extinction events. Since life emerged on our planet, there have been 5 mass extinctions. Sometimes these events last many years, but sometimes a mass extinction can happen very, very suddenly. Some scientists think we're on the verge of a 6th mass extinction. Others think it's already begun. But the question everybody asks is there anything we can do to stop it? Okay, now what?
Oh, thank Neptune you answered. I need you on my 6.
Oh, I'm kind of busy here, pal.
Then you leave me no choice.
What? No, you wouldn't.
I'm calling in my marker.
Oh, come on, that was 8 years ago.
Huh, let's see what your wife thinks.
Okay, fine. I'm rolling now. Give me 30 seconds. Okay, where are you? Drop a pin.
I'm in Doom Tower. The Sarath is leaking back into the world, and the Arbiter can't keep the wards up. Doom Tower is falling, and she needs help keeping these bad guys in here. Especially the bosses, like the Scarab King.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Doom Tower, call her the Arbiter. She needs champions, and we must answer the call.
Wait, are you talking about a video game?
I'm talking about the video game, Raid Shadow Legends. Get your butt in this game, pick a champion, and help me out here.
Hold on, is this today's sponsor?
Yep, it's a super cool, super detailed, tactical RPG battle system available on iOS and Android for free. And it's got PvE and PvP content.
I do like PvP.
I know you do. Now look at this. Raid Call of the Arbiter is their new limited series, out now, and to celebrate, Raid has added some characters from the show as new playable champions. One of them, Artak, you can get for free just by logging into the game for 7 days between now and July 24th. If you join now by clicking the link and scanning the QR code, you'll get a free starter pack with an epic champion Drake and his cool in-game loot.
Okay, I'm joining now, but seriously, where are you? How in the world? Okay, pal, hang on, I'm coming.
First we gotta do a battle cry. Yahtzee!
I'm not doing that.
Come on, Yahtzee!
Yahtzee.
Yahtzee!
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 Now you're ready.
The Earth is always changing. There's the climate, there's... Excuse me?
Oh, I've been hearing this for years.
No, that's not
hey,
what I've...
if the climate gets colder, you'll be fine.
Why's that?
Because you're covered in wool.
Oh, because I'm a...
Yeah. First, Al Gore told me that in 5 years, the polar bears would be sunburned and everything would be underwater. That was 30 years ago.
You're missing
I can't drive an SUV, but oh sure, those big shots can
Also,
take their private jets to Davos so they can wag their finger in my face.
I'm not
All
saying...
this
Electric
plot
car. It's green.
up in
Okay,
here has
fine.
developed.
Where do you think the electric comes from? The electric fairy?
Right
it
after,
comes from coal. You want more clean
Putin
energy?
says
Build
Russia
nuclear plants,
wants
you moron.
You're not-
It's a
expansion.
scam. I can't believe you're still falling for this.
My point
He's done got
is,
everything into
man-made
place
or
up
not,
here
the climate
to
is
take the
always
Milwaukee gap.
changing.
Oh.
Okay?
Yeah, sorry. I gotta stay off Twitter for a while.
That's always a good idea. It's not just the climate of the Earth that's
Basically,
changing,
all he has to do is
but
give
also
the
the
green light
core
to do it.
within the Earth, as well as the ground beneath our feet. The science of earthquakes is called seismology, but seismology is not an exact science. Seismologists and geologists think they know how earthquakes work and what causes them, but they're not able to predict them with any consistency. If they could, they would. Let's add up the deaths from 3 large, fairly recent earthquakes. The 1976 Tangshan earthquake in China, the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami, the 2010 Haiti earthquake. On the low end, those 3 events killed 700,000 people. but that number is probably closer to 1.2 million. Let that sink in for a minute. It's important. Those aren't numbers. Those are people. They're infants, the elderly, entire families. In one day, a million people are just gone. You would think that mainstream science would be open to new ideas that could help predict these disasters. You would think they would entertain alternative theories that could save millions of lives. You would think so, but you would be wrong. The history of science is filled with alternative theories that were once ridiculed but are now accepted. The idea of continental drift was called
now
nonsense.
What do you think?
An asteroid impact killing the dinosaurs was called science fiction. At one time, if you said the Earth orbits the sun, the church might seize your property and throw you in prison. Things haven't changed all that much. A mass extinction is defined as an event where at least 75% of species on Earth are wiped out. There's evidence of 5 major mass extinctions that have occurred throughout Earth's history. The first was 450 million years ago. Another was 375 million years ago. The most catastrophic extinction, known as the Great Dying, took place.
We have multiple breaking news coming out. Please share this video. Today is December 23rd, 2024, and welcome to the Real GS News channel. Guys, give this video a big thumbs up. We have tons of information coming out, and yeah, we need to pray for the people out there in the big city. So there was another incident in the subway, another one. This one here, a 72 years old, he was pushed onto tracks in the big city, and now needs
Vladimir is liable to do something before the 20th.
He needs prayer
on this.
He needs prayer. 70.
He's got about a month here
years old
to make his moves if he wants to make them.
This is not looking good. Absolutely not looking good. New York Gov says the subway lawlessness is going down. Well, it says here the wrong track. You have the Gov was slammed on social media after touting how safe the big city system has become, thanks to her efforts hours after an innocent was set on fire. Unbelievable. It just, guys, I'm trying to figure out if they are truly people. I mean, again, yes, they are people, but you know, the Bible says that God is going to give up many, many people to a reprobate mind. And a reprobate mind means that you are separated from God. You no longer know the truth. You don't see the truth. You become foolish. You're separated from God. So I feel like a lot of people are separated from God. Many people has been given up to a debased
Now, Vladimir did say,
and that's what's going on here, guys. All right, so before I start, for those of you that want to send us letters, prayer requests, you can send it to me, Louis Santiago.
He had Christmas
my wife,
for the
Jessica
West
Santiago, at 3432 U.S. Highway 19, number 2, Holiday, Florida, 34691. We're going to get to all this here, guys, but let me just show you some of this stuff. Guys, make sure you give this video a big thumbs up. It truly helps out when you give the video a thumbs up. So make sure you give this video a thumbs up and also share it. Alright, so we're gonna see what's going on with more of these breaking news. Once again, they caught the individual, and he's from the southern region. There you go. There you go. He's from the southern region. Once again, he was cuffed, set NYC, again, subway on FIRE, and watched her. You know what? He sat down and he watched her. I mean, who does that? There's so many demons out there, antichrist spirits out there. This is something that people needs to start waking up and heading towards Christ. We have more breaking news updates. Panama sent a message to the Donald. Hands off our Panama Canal. And yeah, they sent a message to Donald. Donald's like, we shall see. More breaking news. Bunkers are booming in the U.S. From steel boxes to underground mansions, despite experts saying a regular basement works just fine. Why let facts ruin a $500,000 panic room? Fear sells faster than hotcakes, and so do doomsday shelters. One thing I tell people, my bunker is the kingdom of heaven. We have more information coming out. Guys, this is happening in Moscow. Alright, this is happening in the bear capital. You got all these stuff going on. Nobody knows what's happening, but there's a lot of blue lights out there, law enforcement. Something went down, but we're not getting any information. Not one info. Okay. So, I want to see what's going on with this news. A lot of people went on social media and they sent a message to the NY.gov. NY.gov was slammed on a platform Sunday after touting how safe the big city system had become thanks to her efforts just hours after an innocent was set on fire. And guys, I just want to bring this up really quick. I did watch the video, and there was one person sitting down just watching, and I'm like, maybe the person is in shock. Maybe he's like scared or something, and he didn't do nothing. But then later, the story came out. That man sitting down, it was the one that said, you know what, F-I-R-E. I'm like, wow, he sat down and actually looked. In an X post on Sunday, the Gov claimed that the lawlessness has decreased. They no longer see the truth anymore, guys. This is the same woman that passed a law that you could commit adultery, that it's fine. Once again, guys, just to let you know, I mean, this is the one that said, you know, adultery is all right. You're not going to get in trouble. In an X post on Sunday, the Gov claimed that the lawlessness has decreased in this region since she deployed the National Guard in March. Where were the National Guard when this happened? I'm just saying, I'm not going after National Guards here, but where were they when that happened this morning? So once again, last week, the Gov sent 750 National Guard members to the subway in an effort to curb holiday lawlessness. In March, I took action to make our subway safer for the millions who take the trains each day, since deploying the National Guard to support the safety. It was never like this. But again, you want to keep going for the LEFT, that's what you're going to get. The problem is people just want free handouts. And look, I could say that because I remember, again, when I lived in New Jersey, people's like, I'm not going for the right. They're going to take away, you know, all the goodies. So what? Go out and look for a job. Man. So, and look, I'm not trying to be rude here, but man, you know, God commanded man to go out and work. The Gov post came around 8 hours after an individual from the southern region allegedly said, you know what, F-I-R-E, and just watched her, you know what, gone on the F train. And, you know, again, I'm trying to skip certain words here, guys. This event had been widely reported by the time the Gov tweet went up. I mean, she is not being loved. Absolutely not being loved. And by the way, just to let you guys know, these are the people that Joey and the VP has allowed into our sleeping giant for the past almost 4 years. The incident took place at the Stillwell Avenue station at around 7:30, according to the NY, and several platforms user responded to Gov tweet with graphic footage. And the tweet also briefly had an X community note attached to it, which referenced the event. Melissa, who served as secretary under former NY, Mr. Cuomo, called out the sitting Gov post and mentioned that another person had been out. And by the way, a 72 years old was pushed. Just to let you guys know that also happened. 2 were gone in the subway today. The Gov of State of NY is
from a report.
Tourist
Iran's
who can't
leadership,
even
which is
bother
Iran,
to read a newspaper while
believes
she's
that Israel's fixing to do something very soon.
Man, they're really frustrated.
And I just told you a report earlier.
I don't blame them.
That Iran is fixing to do something to Israel very soon.
So once again, you have some people out there from the right party also responded to the poorly timed tweet. You must have missed today's news. Once again, they said bluntly to the governor. Sources identified the individual of interest to the News Digital as 33 years old, saying
just like I said, that was a weird flat pattern.
Our sleeping giant land.
That's not a surveillance
approximately
pattern. That's a targeting pattern.
But whether he did
picked all of their targets
legal
now.
or legally was unclear.
Within patterns.
Big shout out to Joe! Alright, so once again, you have the news reach out to the sleeping giant ICE. And ladies and gentlemen, this is why the Donna is saying, when I come into the spotlight, all of you are going back. Unbelievable. Now guys, I cannot play this video here. I cannot play this video. But there was another incident. A 72 years old was pushed. She said everything seemed safe. What do you call this? See, these people they see what's going on. When they see this in their mind, oh, everything is great. Because their minds has been transformed. Their minds has been transformed. They could see, fire in the background. To them, it's peaceful. What's bad is good, what's good is bad. What's peace is war, was peace is war, was war is peace.
Jen, I'll wake you
so
up.
Once again, the individual was cuffed after, he lit the individual, then sitting across from her to watch.
I'll put an alert out over Discord.
Law enforcement caught him after a witness spotted him riding another dude basically lives in a train. Wow. He was on another train. Surveillance footage shows Lawlessness briefly talking to the suspect right after the Sunday 7:30 a.m. but let him go, only realizing later he was the individual. Unbelievable. Guys, I don't know how to do things out there in that big city, but my goodness, wow. The individual clothes were completely burned off. That's messed up. You have MTA workers say that's messed up. It's only 3 days until the 25th, Christmas.
I won't use WhatsApp.
What did Pope Francis say? Let him in! Let him in! Give me a second here, guys. We're going to go with this Panama story really quick. So Panama leader told Donald, you better hands off our canal. Panama's leader delivered a sharp rebuke to suggestions about the sleeping giant reclaiming control of the Panama Canal. The waterway, which handles 14,000 vessels annually, operates on carefully
I think I'm going to
calculated
download
rates
my
based
flight
on market
simulator on
condition and maintenance
this computer, and
needs,
we'll do a flight here in a minute.
not arbitrary decision. Now, the leader of Panama resolute message was crystal clear. Every square meter belongs to Panama. Our sovereignty is not negotiable. Donald responds, we'll see about that. 2025, buckle up. I mean, with all these millions about to be sent back home and all this stuff going on in Canada and Mexico, and I mean, guys, it's going to be a wild ride in 2025 when he takes the spotlight. All right, give me a second here, guys. It's a really slow night, too. It's a really slow night. Jeez, he really going after all these regions. Man, Donald wants to buy Greenland again. I think Greenland, if I'm not mistaken, I think Greenland once was a state, but it didn't last long. But I think Greenland once was a state. Donald wants to buy Greenland again after claiming Sleeping Giant could take back ownership of Panama Canal. Absolutely necessity. So he got 4 years, so he wants to do everything ASAP. The question is, why did U.S. let go of Greenland? I have to do some more research on that. I'm looking for some more information here, guys. Slow night. It's a very slow night. Make sure you check out the videos I posted today. The links will be in the comments box, guys. I posted some videos. I did 2 live streams. It's been a very long day. Very, very long day. Seems like this one here is going to be a quick video. There's some flying objects, UFO, but a lot of this videos is just, I could tell it's just all baloney. It's just coming to a point that people on platform are just really,
That's
really
not what I wanted
going
to do.
overboard with the
I wanted to download it to this computer,
with the
but it's wanting me to
when it comes to the drone. Give me a second here.
connect this computer to that computer. Oh, I can't. Here we go. Okay. Install.
Like I said, this woman here makes my Puerto Rican people look so bad.
I can exit out of here.
And she kind of reminds me of someone that I know. And it just... AOC believes the reason the subway is not safe is thanks to people like Danielle.
That may take a couple minutes to download.
Yeah.
I'll pull up and we'll do some flights.
We're definitely living in perilous time, perilous man. Things are not looking that great
rearrange
in
some
these
stuff.
last
So
days.
give me about 10 or 15 minutes.
It's been, again, those regions has been really bad way before Penny. All right, guys. I think I'm going to end it here. This is going to be a quick one. But, yeah, I mean, there's not that much. Sunday has been a very slow day. It's been a very slow day, and I managed to find a whole bunch of videos. I mean, a whole bunch of news, but it's been very slow at the same time. But I'm just gonna rest, just go to sleep a little early tonight. It's been a long day. Just got home from my second job, and it was very busy tonight. It was really busy tonight, and which is a good thing. And I want to thank every single one of you for your love and support. Thank you so much. Please do me a favor and pray for the families and friends that lost their loved ones. And if you're out there, if you live in NY, please be aware that there's some things going down in those cities. Do not wear your headset. Do not wear your headset when you go out. You need to be aware of your surroundings in these last days. Again, the enemy are looking for those who are not paying attention. So please, please be aware of your surrounding. If you see something, say something. And instead of recording, be a hero. Put the phone down and be a hero. Because a lot of people just want to record. Forget about recording. Go out and do something. Become a hero. See, back then, there used to be heroes. Now, everybody just want to... It's just not there. So please pray for the families and friends. And also give this video a thumbs up. Share the video. Thank you so much for your love and support. Have a good night, guys. God bless you all. For those of you that want to send us letters, a prayer request, you can send it to me, Luis Santiago, or my wife, Jessica Santiago, at 3432 US Highway 19, number 2, Holiday, Florida, 34691. Once again, guys, $1 a month Patreon will get you access to our live stream every Monday. We talk about things that we cannot talk about in the platform. Also, I posted videos today. Those links will be in the comments box. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you all. Put faith and trust in Jesus Christ, for he's the only way, the truth, and the life. No one gets to the Father except through Jesus. Thank you so much for watching. Till next time later. Peace.
That this interstellar object might in fact have been some kind of technological artifact. Just explain to me, why do you believe, what's the evidence to show that this object, whatever it was that hit the ocean, is the object that came from space? Because I know some people have suggested that the seismic data that you relied on in some cases was inaccurate and it was possibly just a rolling truck or something. But the most important thing is, what is it about the constituents of those spherules that you found that makes you think that it is perhaps, well, let's be blunt about it, a melted spacecraft of some kind?
Well, so first, the location. We based the search on the Department of Defense data. It came from sensors on board the US government satellites that detected the fireball, the light from the explosion. And we went back and forth across this region of 10 kilometers in size 26 times. Now, just before we went there, we looked at some data from seismometers in the area that we found only one seismometer that actually had a signal at the time of the explosion, but it was not used to guide us because we searched the entire area defined by the US Space Command. And then recently, some scientists said, oh, we don't believe the seismometer data was a meteor, maybe it was a truck, but they ignored the US government data that guided us in the first place. And
Can I quickly pick you up on that? Because I'm fascinated by the fact that you have been given, a scientist working at Harvard's illustrious Harvard University has been given access to defense data from super, super secret satellites that I know have downlinks here over Australia. And I have sources here in Australia who've told me that they've seen some of this data and that it's quite extraordinary what we can see in outer space.
The French are now showing up for the gap.
Let's just ask a theoretical question here, sir. Based on the knowledge that you have from what you've seen of the DoD data, without telling me anything about its capabilities, let's protect the secrets of the United States.
So Italy is now showing up for the gap.
Do you think the United States government would be aware if alien spacecraft were entering and exiting Earth's atmosphere with the technology that you've been apprised of?
Yes, I would think so. If we are dealing with objects
I'm working
that
on getting all this
produce
set
a
up here.
fireball, definitely, because the sensors that the U.S. government is using are designed within a fraction of a second to detect the launch of ballistic missiles from the heat that they generate. And then they report to the US president about those because it could be a national security risk. And now, this agency, the US Space Command, is funded at $30 billion a year, more than the budget of NASA. And they come out with an official letter to NASA confirming that this meteor was interstellar in origin. Now, a year later, astronomers write and publish a paper in the Astrophysical Journal saying, we don't believe this agency. So not only are they saying that taxpayers' money is being wasted, I mean, they should also lose sleep at night because, if a ballistic missile was heading towards Washington, D.C., and this agency is unable to figure out the speed of the ballistic missile by a factor of 3, as they are arguing about this meteor not being interstellar, that there was a mistake by a factor of 3, and they would report to the US president that ballistic missile is going towards Mexico instead of Washington, D.C. That's a serious matter. And they published this claim in the Astrophysical Journal. So I say, this is not serious. This is a childish behavior of them to dismiss data that was double-checked by the U.S. government. I go
let me turn
there,
this
and then
music
I
off
find
and stuff in here, get
materials.
everything set
And
up.
now they say, oh, these materials might be coal ash. And so we checked 55 elements from the periodic table, and we verified that it's not coal ash. And what I'm trying to say is that some of these scientists keep looking for reasons to dismiss this study, which is, just the way science is done. It took a lot of work to design this expedition, go there, collect the materials, and then analyze them for 9 months. These people are just like critics. They look around, they don't do anything. They just try to criticize and bring enough dust up in the air so that they can claim they can't see anything. And I see that as an attempt that is anti-science, actually, rather than what they claim to do. They claim to protect science. In fact, they are damaging science because science should be based on evidence, and we should not have a prejudice. And the only way to learn something new is to collect the data and the evidence through hard work, which is what I'm doing.
Now, sir, I spoke to a few of your colleagues in astrophysics and asked them about you before we did this interview. And one of them chuckled wryly when I asked him about Professor Avi Loeb. And I said, give me a word that describes him. And he said, I can't give you one word, I can give you 3. Dogged, courageous, and contrarian. And I respect that. I think for somebody doing the work that you're doing, especially making an inquiry into essentially the idea of non-human intelligent life, you have to be those 3 things, don't you? You're going against the scientific establishment, very much like Galileo did 400 plus years ago.
Yeah, so every morning I jog at sunrise. I do it on land, and I did it also on the ship that we had in the Pacific Ocean that was fittingly called Silver Star. It was an Australian ship. And one morning we had a Netflix team that is making a documentary about my research. One morning they decided to join me at sunrise, and they asked me to jog 3 times the usual amount of time that I jog. It was about 10 miles or 15 kilometers. Then the director asked me, Avi, it looks like you're running. Are you running away from something or towards something? And I said both. I'm running away from some of my colleagues who have strong opinions without seeking evidence. And I'm running towards a higher intelligence in interstellar space. And
well, can I ask you this? Can I ask you this, sir? You believe fundamentally the implication behind your research is that you believe the evidence on UFOs, UAPs, is now sufficiently there prima facie.
We're going to get in here
there's
with
enough on the
KLW
facts to
and fly
suggest
all this
there
in a
might
minute.
be something
As soon as
there.
I get all this set up, I guess talk
What
to
is your view about the likelihood that this planet has been visited by non-human intelligences?
You see, this is a path that was not taken by scientists. And when you take a new path, there is a chance that you will find low-hanging fruits. And if you think about new data that we will get, in a year, there will be the Rubin Observatory in Chile. It has a camera that was just constructed the size of a person with 3.2 billion pixels, 1,000 times more pixels than your cell phone camera. And it will survey the southern sky every 4 days. And based on my calculations, it has a chance of seeing an Oumuamua-like object every month or every couple of months. So there will be many more. We will not be in the dark. And among rocks that we might find from interstellar space, we might also see a technological gadget. And that's the way to find it. And we are developing with my postdoctoral fellow at Harvard, the Richard Cloet, we are developing the tools that will allow us to identify interstellar objects from the data stream coming from the Rubin Observatory. In addition, I'm planning to go back to the Pacific Ocean and visit also the site we've been to look for bigger pieces, but have a second expedition in the future to look for another interstellar meteor. Altogether, my hope is that it will become obvious once we find the data and the evidence, and it will be available to the public. We can wait for the US government to tell us what they know, but it may be just like waiting for Godot, because first of all, they are not scientists. They are worried about national security. They have a different day job. My day job is to figure out what lies outside the solar system. And since they are not giving me any data, I will get the data myself, because the sky is not classified, the oceans are not classified, and we have the freedom of studying these media to figure out if we are alone or not. We shouldn't rely on the US government to tell us whether we are alone.
Now, one of the things I read was your paper, your preliminary paper on the so-called spherules that you recovered from the ocean. And they apparently contained an abundance of beryllium, lanthanum, and uranium, described as a never-seen-before BLAU composition. And they also exhibited iron isotopic ratios unlike those found on Earth. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, so what we did is look at 60 elements from the periodic table and measure the abundances of those elements in the unique type of spherules that were only found around the meteor site. And we realized that some elements have an abundance that is up to 1,000 times bigger than in solar system materials. And there are many such elements, but the most prominent ones are the ones you mentioned, beryllium, lanthanum, uranium, and we called it BLAU composition because there was no name for it in the scientific literature. And, it's possible that this composition is originated from a natural source. And just to give you an example, if you take a planet like the Earth and bring it close to the most common type of star, a dwarf star that has 1/10 of the mass of the sun, the planet will be melted and also spaghettified into a stream of debris, half of which will be ejected to interstellar space at the speeds that resemble that of this meteor. And since you melt the rock, you could get differentiation. Some elements will be left and others will be removed from those rocks that go to interstellar space. And so that's a natural mechanism of reaching those unusual abundance patterns. And I wrote about it in a paper, but obviously until we find bigger pieces, we will not know what the origin is. And I should say, if we find a technological gadget and it has buttons on it, the question is, should we press a button?
Well, I'd be pressing it, sir, just to find out what happens next. One of the things that really does strike me, though,
wow, this
about
download's
the response
take
to your spherules investigation is the antagonism, the
for some reason,
hostility
it has
and
me
the
throttled
ridicule
about
that's
7
been directed
megabytes
at you by people on no solid basis. Because A lot
And I've
was
got to
made
download
of this
129
seismic claim. You know, the
gigabytes.
claim was that you'd simply tried to find these spherules in an area based on seismic data, which, as I understand it from my reading, is not true. And yet, what really shocked me was the New York Times, one of the most eminent newspapers in the world. It abandoned any pretense at objectivity when it did a story about your case. And it asked a very mocking question of a guy called Benjamin Fernando, a planetary seismologist at Johns Hopkins University, who pushed this idea that you just picked up data from a passing truck. And the New York Times said, how did you conclude that we're not being invaded by aliens? Now, frankly, Professor, you're a very polite, genteel chap, and I'm going to say it for you. That was just a piss take. It was an attempt by a newspaper to take the mickey out of you and mock you and ridicule you. How do you feel about that? How do you respond to something like that?
Well, first of all, I should say the New York Times Magazine had a large feature article about my research just half a year earlier. And so they're seeking clickbaits, and some of their reporters are very superficial, and that's the nature of journalism these days, and we should just rather than mud wrestle with those who are superficial. I mean, I don't want to get dirty. My approach is very different. An eagle very often has a crow pecking on its neck, and you might suspect that the eagle would try to fight the crow off the back of its back, but instead the eagle rises to greater heights where the oxygen level is low, and the crow drops off the eagle's back. And that is the approach that I prefer to take after being bruised in interactions that I had previously. And so I just ignore those people who do not make sense. Many of them are really second level scientists. Some of them are not even scientists. They are just bloggers who did not publish even a single scientific paper over the past year. So I asked, if you have a person looking at a soccer match and making comments and telling the players how to pass the ball without actually being on the field, why should we listen to that person? How dare he say that? I'm a player, I'm writing scientific papers every month, several of them. I'm really on the field, and it takes a lot of effort to do the scientific work. I just don't want to be distracted. And so my approach is to ignore those low-level critics and move on, because eventually once we have solid evidence, nobody could ignore it. By now we realize that we are not at the center of the world, and that happens to, even though it is a blow to our ego, it happens to be very useful. If you want to get to Mars, you better not believe that Mars orbits the Earth. Okay? And so knowing what Galileo and Copernicus said helps us cope with reality. And if we realize that we have a neighbor, it would have huge implications for our future, both in terms of religious beliefs that people have and in terms of what we aspire to do.
Now, sir, one of the stories I am fascinated by, and I've spent a lot of time trying to track him down and chase down this story, and I don't know if you're going to tell me about this, but I know you know about this because I have my sources in Israel who tell me you've also been trying to contact him, is the story of Haim Eshed, an Israeli professor of aeronautics and astronautics, a retired brigadier general in Israeli military intelligence. He was the director of space programs for the Israeli Defense Department for 30 years, chair of its space committee, the father of Israel's space program. And in an extraordinary interview in December 2020, Haim Eshed claimed that the government of the United States had been in contact with ET life for years, and that it had signed secret agreements with a galactic federation to do experiments on Earth. He even claimed there was a joint base underground on Mars where aliens collaborate with US astronauts. Now, he claimed President Trump was told about this, but was stopped from revealing it because of fears of mass hysteria. Now, it's too easy to dismiss this chap as somebody who's mentally ill or aged and infirm, because I'm told he's not. I'm told he's still got his marbles, that Haim Eshed is a very, very astute, very clever, and extremely well-respected man. And in fact, another chap called Isaac Ben Israel, the chairman of the Israel Space Agency, whom I know you know, he has also said that whilst Eshed went too far with his claims, he vouched for Haim Eshed's seriousness, sincerity, and standing in the field. Now, I apologize for that ridiculously long question, but there are millions of people watching you right now, Professor. Tell me, what do you think of Haim Eshed's theory, the suggestion that we are already in touch with ETs?
Well, his remarks echo what we heard from David Grush. And, in December 2023, just 5 months ago, I spoke with David Grush, and I asked him for details, clear evidence to substantiate what he is talking about. He said that he cannot provide it because of legal issues. But he himself, talked about things that resemble what Haim Eshed talked about. Around the same time, I was also visiting CERN. Interestingly, the host showed me the book by Eshed. Now, Eshed gave all this information in a magazine interview to a journalist, but he did not include the details in his book. And so the host was asking me to translate from Hebrew to English. And when I looked at the book, I realized that Eshed is speaking about me. And he was talking about Oumuamua. I've never had a discussion with him, but I know that he was well aware of what I'm doing and appreciating the science that I'm doing. And as you said, I don't think, he went crazy. I do think that people regard him very highly when, and still are. And so it's interesting, maybe there is some fire behind the smoke. I mean, we hear from different people. Now, within government, within the US government, there might be different sections, some of which are not aware of what's going on in others. And that may explain why the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office insists that there is nothing really extraterrestrial in what they are doing. So, we can wait for the evidence to come out or for more people to eventually reveal it. I had a visitor from Lockheed Martin, someone that used to play an important role there at my home. And I said, do you believe or do you think that there is any substance behind David Grush's claim? Maybe a corporation like Lockheed Martin has some materials. Maybe the government
That makes
gave
no
it.
sense.
And I expected him to dismiss it.
Flight Simulator is fraud on this at 3 and 4
I
megabytes.
don't think it's necessarily wrong.
I just
And
downloaded
so,
the main game
might
off
well
of Steam
be
at
that the materials
400
are not held
a
by
second.
the Pentagon, by the Department of Defense, but they were given to corporations.
I don't know if we'll be able to play
in
this
that
tonight or
case,
not.
The corporations
Do what
will
I want
develop
to
a
do.
relationship very similar to a patient-psychiatrist relation. A psychiatrist never
There's
solves
no
the
reason why this
problem
should be
of the
frauded
patient
at 3.2.
because, they get paid for addressing them. And so, the corporations are not following a scientific narrative. They are not trying to inform humanity of astronomical.
And I can't find nowhere to change any settings in it.
Realizations. And so, as a result, they never resolve the issue. They never tell the U.S. government the full story. And they don't have necessarily the best scientists. So the only way forward is either to get to the source within government,
It's something to do
or
with
to
the
actually
game
collect
itself.
the information ourselves,
It ain't the
rather
Spectrum
than
this
wait
time.
for them.
Except it
And
has been
I
crappy.
take the
The
second-
Spectrum has today.
Can I just interrupt there for a moment, Professor? I just wanted to pin you down. I was told that you tried to meet Haim Eshed.
Right.
Did you try?
I tried to meet him, but didn't. In the last visit that I had to Israel, it didn't work out. So maybe
and
next time.
can I ask you this? Have you spoken to any people in Israel about Haim Eshed's claims? I think his claims are extraordinarily significant, and I have sources in both Israel and America who've told me that Haimashed is an incredible figure in the Israel space program. People speak about him with awe. And as one person said to me, if Haimashed says that,
yeah, August, hang
I'm
tight.
taking it
We'll
seriously.
figure out something in a minute.
Are you?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I talked with people who know him well, and they have a great respect to what he says. And so the only issue I have is that I haven't seen the evidence. He was talking about things, but, you know, it's really difficult to embrace an opinion without seeing the evidence, the facts behind it, even documents, you know. I haven't seen any of those. I'm trying to do my best job as a scientist. And I believe, if you ask me, I believe it's arrogant for us to think that we are alone, that we are the smartest that ever lived, the smartest species since the Big Bang. And I think we will soon get a reality check on that, either from AI that becomes comparable to the human brain as we speak. And within years, we will not be the most intelligent entities on Earth, irrespective of extraterrestrials, but that would give us sort of a sense of modesty. And I think in the distant future, if we find a neighbor that is far more advanced than we are, that has access to technologies that we do not understand, those, you know, that experience will be similar to Moses in the biblical story, seeing the burning bush that was never consumed. And, you know, if obviously you can find online nowadays gadgets that would impress Moses as much as he was impressed to believe in a superhuman entity that he called God. But even for us, you know, if we bring technologies that we will use 100 years from now, if we were to witness them now, we would be at awe, a religious awe, and we might start to believe in a superhuman entity. And for me, you know, this is, you know, the sense of awe that was lost when Friedrich Nietzsche said God is dead. And, you know, after that, that was in 1882. After that, we had the age of science and technology that manifests hubris, you know, human arrogance. And it's about time for us to develop a new sense of modesty. And I think that sense will be brought by a package from a neighbor that we would find in our backyard.
You've said previously, I'm struck by the religious references you've made there, and you've said previously you're not religious, but that you're struck by the order we find in the universe, by the regularity, by the existence of rules of nature. And you've said you are in awe of how the laws of nature we find here on Earth seem to apply all the way out to the edge of the universe. And that is remarkable. Does such order ever make you wonder, not whether there's a creator, be that a god, or maybe it's just a highly technological, incredibly advanced alien civilization?
Yeah, in fact, you know, I get this sense of awe, especially after visiting the rooms of my daughters in the morning. I mean, they are a mess. The natural state is chaos, okay? And nevertheless, if you look at the universe, it's very organized. The laws we find on Earth apply everywhere. Actually, the universe started from the simplest possible set of initial conditions. It was nearly uniform. And the complexity that we find today was a result of gravity pulling together matter. Now, the fundamental question that I would actually ask on a first date with an extraterrestrial is, what happened before the Big Bang? Because at the moment, we don't have a theory that predicts that. You need to marry quantum mechanics with gravity in order to figure it out. And we just don't have a predictive theory that tells us that. And in my mind, you know, once we get to the point where we have a theory of quantum gravity, I can imagine the possibility of our engineers, quantum gravity engineers, creating a baby universe in the laboratory. And now the question is, did our universe start this way? Is it possible that our universe was created by some scientist or engineer in a white lab coat? And you might call it that entity God, but it may well be a natural product of understanding how to unify quantum mechanics and gravity. Now, if you make such a universe, you will make it in the simplest possible way. You will start with uniform initial conditions, a universe that has zero energy, which is our universe, because the expansion energy of the universe is exactly balanced by the gravitational binding energy of the universe. So it has zero energy. It's a very simple initial state. And that would be the kind of state that if I wanted to create in the laboratory, I would make it. And then let gravity take its part and eventually create complexity. But it all started from a very simple initial state. And, you know, an advanced technological civilization that can create a baby universe in the laboratory or can create life in the laboratory would have all the qualities that we ascribed to traditional religious thinking about God. And so to me, there is a way of bringing together science and religion by actually, through the method of finding a much more advanced level of science that can create miracles for us.
Well, Professor, I, for one, take my hat off to the fact that a learned academic with your incredible reputation and expertise is applying himself to the study of a phenomena that, frankly, many in science continue to ridicule and treat with taboo. So I doffs me hat to you, sir. So before we go this week, I want to pay tribute to the passing of one of the greats of research into the study of UFOs, UAPs, Dr. Bruce Maccabee, who passed away in Ohio last week at the age of 82. I had the privilege of getting to know Bruce because of his great work into what was called the Kaikoura UFO incident in New Zealand. In December 1978, an Argosy cargo aircraft carrying newspapers from Christchurch to Blenheim, which was a little town just on the north of the South Island in New Zealand, it suddenly saw at thousands of feet these weird, luminous, spherical objects coming up to the cockpit window and then zooming away again. Bill Startup reported them when he got back to Christchurch, and this was picked up by a journalist in Australia, Leonard Lee, who asked the journalists that he knew in New Zealand at the time, a guy called Quentin Fogarty and another guy called Dennis Grant, both Australian journalists who happened to be in New Zealand at the time. He asked them to go and investigate the story. So they hired a local freelance cameraman called, wonderfully, Davy Crockett, and they went out on the Argosy aircraft for its next trip up the coast carrying newspapers, and incredibly they captured imagery of these objects. This became an absolute sensation, not least because it was only a few weeks after the disappearance, the mysterious disappearance, of an Australian pilot called Frederick Valentich over Bass Strait in Australia. So the public were switched on to UFOs. There was an awareness about this issue, and as a young teenage kid myself, this story probably captured my attention more than any other to make me realize that there really was something to the UFO phenomenon. And a large part of that is in due tribute to Dr. Bruce Maccabee, because he came out to New Zealand and Australia, looked at the film that was shot by Davy Crockett and Quentin Fogarty, and he came to the conclusion that the object, whatever it was not what the New Zealand Air Force had tried to explain it away as some kind of reflection of squid boat lights from the surface of the ocean. That one was a complete joke. The other one they tried to suggest was that it was Jupiter or Venus. And that one Bruce blew out of the water because of its astronomical knowledge. He proved they were nowhere near the area at the time. There was no way it fitted with what the crews say they saw. And in fact, it was Bruce's expertise working for the US Navy as an optical physicist that gave him the skills he had to be able to do this kind of analysis. He'll be sorely missed, Bruce. He was a really lovely bloke. He was very generous, warm and sharing. And I'll miss him, and I know a lot of other people will as well. Now, before we go, there's a couple of questions from our viewers that I'll try and get out of the way. The first one is, the Senate has been pretty quiet on UAPs, but you get the drift of it. They're basically asking what's happening behind the scenes. Well, I can tell you what's happening. A lot. There's a lot I can't talk about, and I'm sorry, we just have to be vague. Yes, there are witnesses who are being encouraged to come forward. There are good people who are deliberating about whether or not they give evidence. This is why the Schumer Amendment was so important. If that law had passed, this wouldn't be an issue. But basically, we need protection for potential whistleblowers. What the national security state has done very, very well is stop Congress from providing the protections that were necessary in order to ensure that whistleblowers would feel safe about coming forward. Here's one. Hi Ross, the story of Michael Herrera has come to the fore again. They're asking me my views on the Michael Herrera story. I'm reserving judgment on that story. I've spoken to Michael. I like him. I find his presentation of what he says credible. I'm doing some research into it at the moment, and I'd certainly be very interested in hearing from anyone who can give me a lead one way or the other about what he says. What Michael describes is an extraordinary situation when he was a US Marine working in a disaster relief in Indonesia, and he says he came across a group of black-clad paramilitaries who were in company with a gigantic, hovering, metallic disc that appeared to be under United States control. It's an extraordinary story, and like a lot of the stories that I get, I'm keeping an open mind. I'm just interested to hear from any witness that can help me with any evidence to substantiate one way or the other. Somebody also asking me here about Jason Sands, the new whistleblower Jason Sands. I've also interviewed Jason, and fair to say, I think the best thing that could happen to prove up Jason's story, if it is true, is for people who were with him in the desert on the day that he says he came across an alien entity and an alien craft, would be for some of those witnesses to come forward and be willing to give evidence to corroborate his account. In all of these cases, what somebody like I looks for is corroboration, witness evidence that can support the primary evidence of a first-hand witness. If there is this organisation that wants to keep the UAP's argument secret, why doesn't Congress call out these people as traitors of the country and Constitution? Well, that's a bloody good question. I have no idea. It amuses me as well, because essentially if you believe what David Grush says, and I do think that there is a very grave allegation that I know Congress is fully briefed on, that we are faced with an egregious breach of the Constitution. Congress is meant to be the government. Even the President is beholden to Congress. And the key allegation that lies behind David Grush's claims is that Congress has been kept in the dark about very secret operations that are known about by people inside the intelligence community and Defence Department. Yes, if this is illegal, there is a question as to whether these people are traitors. It's up to you, the people, to tell Congress that you care about it. And it's up to those people who are supposedly hiding these secrets to justify their behaviour, because there is going to be a reckoning. That's all for this week. Lovely to see you. Let's talk another time when I've got more interesting stuff coming up on Reality Check. Thanks very much. Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And please don't forget to click that red subscribe button to ensure you get more of News Nation's unbiased and fact-driven news coverage. Hello and welcome back to Reality Check. I'm Ross Coulthart. Now, is there anything that annoys you more than that constant Carl Sagan refrain, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence? It's the line that's been used by contemporary science so much to try to essentially stop any of the claims being made about anomalous phenomena being taken seriously. Which is why I'm very interested to
I'm
speak
just now
to
at
our next
3%.
guest today, Jim Segala,
It
Dr.
don't look like we're
Jim
going to be able to do
Segala.
Flight 79.
Jim
And
Segala is
what's
a physicist
bad
engineer
about
who
it
spent
is I've
much
had
of
to
the
turn
last
off
few
audio
years
on my
researching
desktop
anomalous phenomena, especially around
because
the
there is
Uinta
music playing
Basin
and it's downloaded
in Utah, where the Skinwalker Ranch is
that I can't turn
located.
off.
He's got a PhD in physics and advanced degrees in engineering, and he's been involved in anomalous phenomenon research for quite a number of decades, and he's got connections with many of the top scientists in this field. What I'm fascinated to talk about with Jim today is you hear it all the time. You hear it from so many people in mainstream science that the subject of UAPs should not be taken seriously because there is no science. There's nobody doing creditable scientific work to investigate these alleged phenomena. But in fact, Dr. Segala has just recently published some initial results of a research project he conducted in the Uinta Basin using custom-built devices called MUPAS for Modular Unidentified Phenomenon Alert System. And what they are, they're sensors that monitor a variety of environmental signals, including RF, gravimetric, gamma radiation, microwaves. And what Jim has found is, I think, bloody astounding. It's extraordinary work. It's really impressive. He put these sensors adjacent to the homes and other locations where subjects who were reporting anomalous phenomena kept journals in which they tracked their anomalous experiences. These included things like unusual physical symptoms and health effects, precognitive effects, UAP and orb sightings. And these people also reported encounters with various morphologies of NHI. Yep, aliens. And what Dr. Segala found was signals that strongly correlated with reported events. Not only that, the data was so consistent, he thinks he can even predict future events with almost 100% accuracy. For stats nerds, that's a 4.8% sigma, even down to whether they're going to be positive or negative experiences. So let's bring Jim in. Jim, welcome to Reality Check. Can you tell me, sir, firstly, who you are? Let's set up your credentials. Let's set you up as a real scientist, someone who's genuinely interested in anomalous phenomena.
Yeah, so I mean, I started out being an engineer, and engineers don't really deal with anomalies anymore. They always want to do everything is nuts and bolts. It's not until I switched over to being a physicist that I started to get into the realm of let's see if we can figure out what's going on with these strange phenomena that's been going on. So, and that's how it all started. I was fortunate enough after I got out of my PhDs to get a internship with Hal Puthoff at his institute in Austin, Texas, where he does, I would say, not cutting edge, not bleeding edge. He's way over the edge when he starts looking at things. So that's where I really cut my teeth in learning how to be a scientist, what to do, what's the right procedures and things like that.
So what have you been doing? You've been actually working at the Skinwalker Ranch, haven't you? You were involved in the ORSAP and BAS studies, essentially the DIA funded studies, the studies funded by the Defense Department.
Yeah, I was involved with Hal. His institution was actually part of that whole time frame when they were Bigelow was trying to understand, what's going on the ranch and doing all this interesting physics and science on the ranch. And Hal was, of course, a big part of that. He was a Bigelow science advisor, so he was actually part of that whole thing and led a lot of the science for that. So I got involved when I was working with him Later on, I actually was boots on the ground on Skinwalker Ranch doing investigations, looking at some of the injuries that are happening there and around in the general vicinity, unexplained injuries that were linked to seeing things or feeling things or having some experience with some kind of non-human intelligence that left injuries on people. That's how I got started in this field.
So let's quickly deal with the broad proposition, Jim, which I posited at the very beginning of the show. What do you say to the scientists, the people in mainstream science, who scoff at the notion that there is any scientific basis at all to anomalous phenomena?
Well, it's all the same thing. In the scientific method, if you follow the scientific method and you do it properly, a lot of the problems that you would normally encounter in an investigation go away, because now you're doing statistics right. You're setting up your experiments so you can actually pull out statistics in a proper way. So when you come to a situation like this, you say, well, we have anomalies that are happening. We're having medical anomalies happening in some part of the country. So we're going to say, okay, how do we prove that? So first of all, you have to have a hypothesis that says, why are they happening? And then you design experiments. So that's a lot of the things that we do is we put together experiments that allow us to really dive down and show to people that if you take all the data and you use verifiable type of equipment, you have proper scientific data.
We interviewed Brandon Fugel on this show a few weeks ago, and Brandon was quite annoyed at the idea that many people push, which is that Skinwalker Ranch, like a lot of TV reality shows, just makes stuff up. As I understand it, he's quite rigorous in ensuring and demanding that the producers of the TV show don't fake anything, and that the phenomena, including what's being revealed in this latest season's series, which is quite extraordinary, including, that any of the phenomena has to be based on solid science. As a scientist yourself, can you confirm that that's the case?
Well, when of course, I spent some time on the ranch, and I did a lot of work at the ranch with other scientists from Hal's group. And, I would ensure that a lot of what happens is verifiable to the point where you can do it. The problem comes in, how do you get it to happen on camera? It's very, very difficult to do. So a lot of what you're seeing might not be real time, but it is authentic in that it happened at some point and it was recreated somehow. So, and that was a problem. I spent a year there trying to do science on camera. And, trying to get it, the anomalies to happen on camera is very, very difficult to do.
So you haven't just focused on Skinwalker. Your work's taken you all over the Uinta Basin, including to a place called the Blind Frog Ranch. What I'm fascinated by is that you've started using sensor systems to try to scientifically measure if when somebody
the U.S. State
is
Department has told its citizens to leave
experiences
Belarus.
with anomalous phenomena,
There are risks of
is there
detention
a
and civil
detectable,
unrest.
statistically measurable piece of data that allows you to verify that something anomalous occurred?
And
Tell
Russia
me
has
about
decided to attack
MUPAS.
Kherson.
What is it? How does it work?
With about
What are you
4,000
measuring?
troops.
So it evolved.
That's down the south
system
part of
and
Ukraine.
the whole program that was invented to understand this all evolved from. We found out, and we were very sure that we were having correlations between when people were seeing things or experiencing
State Department has told its
phenomena,
citizens to
and
leave
then when
Belarus.
there was actually
The
phenomena
U.S. State
reported
Department.
by either a camera or something like that. And then later on, within say 12 to 24 hours, they were actually having symptoms that were just not normal for that type of geography that they were happened to be in. So we saw a lot of this, and it was we had over 40 cases where we had verifiable medical evidence that something happened to them. And then at the same time, we had some kind of evidence that they had seen something or felt something or some type of experience. And then you put all that together and you say to yourself, well, if something is actually happening physically to them during these experiences, it must have some vector, or it must have come from the outside into their body somehow. And if that happens, we could probably measure it at some point if we have the right equipment. So that was the inspiration to say, okay, let's put some equipment near the people that are having these experiences, seeing the UAPs or whatever that's happening, and then see if we can actually get them
An
to
Australian citizen has been
correlate the two.
captured by Russia that was fighting
So
for Ukraine.
what do your MUPAS sensors measure?
So they measure a couple things. A lot of it is the environmental signals, for instance, like all the radiation. Radiation, of course, is a very, very wide band. It goes from microwave all the way up to alpha and gamma, and so it's slow. So we measure a pretty big spread of the electromagnetic spectrum, and we record it like every millisecond. We'll take a snapshot and bring it in and look at it. And then we do, the gamma particles, any alpha or betas or any kind of gamma particles that might be near the person at that time. We measure all sorts of crazy things like, we're measuring like the gravity vectors, the magnetic fields that they're surrounded in, anything that could be perturbated by some type of anomalous craft or some kind of energy that's in the property. So, it's kind of interesting. We started out as, maybe just doing, the standard stuff like the radiation and the gamma. And then we said, wait a minute, if those are getting affected, why isn't the other channels being affected? Like, for instance, the acceleration vectors and things. So we started adding more and more sensors. And now we're...
Can you stop me there? For instance, what? Sorry? Acceleration? What was that?
So the little acceleration. So let's just say that there's something that happens in the environment where a craft will fly by. It'll move the surroundings a little bit, and you can actually pick these up with very, very accurate or very sensitive acceleration vectors. You'll get these little bounces, especially in the magnetic fields. I mean, you look at the magnetic fields.
This flight simulator ain't
if
going
something comes by you, some energetic thing comes by you, it's very possible that the magnetic vector is going to get a little bit. Your gravity vector is going to get hit a little bit. So all of these things could get put into a system, and then we can look at the correlation between all these signals.
Now, Jim, I've got to ask you now, I mean, when you're talking about a craft whizzing by, have you been anywhere where a craft or some kind of UAP has whizzed by and you've seen a change in a magnetic field or any other of these correlative sensor data sets?
So now, after we've done this it started in, say, 2018, we've done this for quite a bit of time now. And I think at this point, we have over 600 instances where we have something verified out in the environment that we've recorded either video or seen through, cell phones or something like that. And at the same time, recorded something with the equipment that allowed us to correlate those two together. And then on top of that, looking back at the people, having them report that within some period of time afterwards, they would have some type of change to their body that indicated that something energetic went by them.
So the way this works, you've got people who've previously experienced anomalous phenomena, including a lot of your test subjects, I understand, have been people who were working in the Uinta Basin, including at Skinwalker Ranch and Blind Frog Ranch. And they were reporting anomalous phenomena, and they were keeping a journal. And so they'd presumably wake up in the middle of the night and say, I just saw an orb in my bedroom. Or, I mean, give me some examples of what they saw.
So it was a nice little system that was set up for them. So these devices just sit there and record, and they're just all in the background record. But you also gave them a nice little portal where they can actually log all of their anecdotal narratives of, like, I woke up and I had this incredible dream. The dogs were barking, and all of a sudden there was, an orb that flew by. I went outside, I looked up, and there was something, and I took a picture of it. So we have all the narratives and all of this anecdotal information from these people for, over 3 years worth of data. We had well over 35 people that actually participated in this. And it's like gobs and gobs of data that we put through models, and we allowed us to do.
So let me cut to the quick. There's a case study in one of your PowerPoints that you very kindly sent me, and it's number 316. And in it, the patient is quoted as saying, immediately after you've picked up some data that actually corroborates this, they say, quote,